The air is heavy, thicker than breath should be. It sits on your skin like a wet wool blanket that never dries. You are standing in darkness so complete that you cannot see your own hand in front of your face. The only way you know you are still standing is the sensation of cold, slick mud seeping through the worn leather of your boots, gripping your ankles with a suction that threatens to pull you down with every shift of your weight. There is a sound, a low, constant hum that vibrates in your ears. It is the sound of millions of insects, a living wall of noise that rises from the black water surrounding you. The smell is overpowering, a mix of rotting vegetation, stagnant water, and the sharp metallic tang of fierce sweat. You're tired, a bone-deep exhaustion that makes your knees tremble, but you cannot sit. To sit is to sink. To sleep is to risk slipping into the brackish water that teems with snakes and snapping turtles. So before you try to find a dry patch of earth in this endless morass, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely find peace in these stories of survival. And let me know in the comments where you are listening from tonight, and what time it is for you. It is always grounding to know who is out there in the quiet with us. Now, dim the lights. Let the humidity of the swamp fill the room. Let the modern world fade into the background noise of the cicadas. Congratulations, you've just woken up in the year 1850. The good news? You're alive, and you are free. The bad news? You're in the middle of the Great Dismal Swamp, a sprawling, unforgiving wilderness on the border of Virginia and North Carolina, and the only thing protecting you from the trackers and their dogs is the mud that is currently trying to swallow you whole. The first thing you notice isn't the freedom, it's the itch. The mosquitoes here aren't like the ones you know. They're relentless clouds that descend the moment the sun dips below the cypress trees. They bite through your shirt, through your trousers, finding every inch of exposed skin until you feel like your body is on fire. You slap at your neck, your hands sticky with humidity and blood, but it doesn't matter. There are always more. You are a maroon. One of the hidden people who have chosen this green hell over the brutality of the plantations. You have traded the lash for the leech, the overseer for the water moccasin, and tonight your first lesson is simply how to exist in a place where the ground itself is a lie. You carefully lift one foot, the mud making a wet, sucking sound as it releases your boot. You test the ground ahead with a stick you've scavenged. Solid ground is rare here. Most of what looks like earth is actually a floating mat of roots and peat, barely thick enough to hold a human's weight. Step too hard and you punch through into the black water beneath. You're looking for the high ground, which in the Great Dismal Swamp means a patch of dirt rising maybe 6 inches above the waterline. You navigate by the texture of the bark on the trees, feeling for the cypress knees that protrude from the water like wooden stalagmites. They are your anchors. Your clothes are damp, clinging to your back. The humidity here is 100% day and night. Nothing ever truly dries. If you have wool, it smells like wet dog. If you have cotton, it hangs heavy and limp. You learn quickly that mould grows on fabric as fast as it grows on fallen logs. You're constantly checking your skin for the telltale rash of trench foot, for the sores that refuse to heal in the damp air. But you keep moving because staying still means the cold will set in. Yes, even in the humid south, the swamp at night drops to a bone-chilling dampness. The mist rises off the water, curling around your legs, seeping into your joints. You wrap your arms around yourself, the rough fabric of your shirt scratching against your insect-bitten skin. You see a flicker of light ahead. Not a lantern. Lanterns are too dangerous. It's a smudge pot, a small fire built inside a hollow log or a clay pot, smothered with damp moss to produce smoke instead of flame. The smoke is thick, acrid, and burns your eyes, but it keeps the mosquitoes at bay. You move toward it, guided by the smell of burning peat. This is your new community, a hidden city built on islands of mud. As you approach, you see the shapes of others. They are silent, moving with a grace that you haven't mastered yet. They don't splash. They don't snap twigs. They glide. Someone hands you a gourd. It's filled with water, but it's brown and teems with sediment. You hesitate. The water here is stained with tannins from the juniper and cypress trees. It looks like tea, dark and forbidding. But the person nodding at you whispers that the tannic acid kills the bacteria. It keeps the water potable on long voyages, and it keeps you alive here. You take a sip. It tastes bitter, like chewing on wood chips, but it is cool. You sit down on a log that has been dragged onto the high ground. The wood is slick with moss. You run your hand along it, feeling the slimy texture of algae. This is your chair, your bed, your table. Tonight you aren't worried about the future. You aren't worried about the laws of the land outside. You're worried about the physics of sleeping. If you lie down on the ground, the dampness will leach the heat from your body within hours. If you sleep too soundly, you might roll into the water. So you watch the others. They don't sleep on the ground. They have built platforms, rough structures lashed between the cypress trees, suspended a few feet above the muck. You see how they climb up, balancing on the swaying wood. It looks precarious, it looks uncomfortable, but it is dry. You find a spot on a lower platform. The wood is hard against your spine. There is no mattress, no pillow, just the unyielding pressure of timber against bone. You curl up, pulling, your knees to your chest to conserve warmth. The smoke from the smudge pot drifts up, stinging your nose, but you welcome it. It pushes the whining cloud of mosquitoes away for a few precious seconds. You close your eyes, but the swamp is never quiet. Bullfrogs croak with a sound like a deep, resonant drum. Owls call out, their voices echoing off the water, and underneath it all the splash of something heavy moving in the dark. An alligator, a bear, or perhaps a tracker who has lost his way. You listen. Your heart beats in rhythm with the croaking frogs. You're uncomfortable, you're wet, you are itchy. But as you drift into a fitful doze, you realize the most important thing. You're hidden. The swamp, with all its misery, is a fortress, and for tonight the mud is your ally. You wake up, but your eyes don't want to open. They feel glued shut by a mixture of exhaustion and the damp, sticky residue of the swamp mist. When you finally force them apart, the world has disappeared. A thick white fog has rolled in during the early hours, erasing the cypress trees, the blackwater, and even the sleeping platform next to yours. It feels less like weather, and more like a physical weight pressing against your chest. The air is cold now, a sharp contrast to the suffocating heat of the evening. It's a wet cold that seeps through your clothes and settles deep in your marrow. You try to stretch, but your body resists. Every joint is stiff, locked in place by the hardwood you slept on, and the humidity that swells your knuckles. You sit up slowly, peeling your damp shirt away from your back. It makes a faint wet sound. The smell of the morning is different from the night. The rot is still there, that underlying scent of decaying vegetation, but now it's mixed with the sharp, piney aroma of cedar and the clean, mineral smell of the mist. You slide off the platform, your boots sinking immediately into the muck with a heavy squelch. You need to wash, but hygiene here is a negotiation with the environment. You walk to the edge of the dark water. You don't splash it on your face, you cups your hands and bring it up slowly. The water is the colour of strong coffee, stained by the roots of the trees. It's cold enough to make your teeth ache. You scrub at your face, trying to remove the layer of soot from the smudge pot and the dried mud from yesterday's trek. The water feels oily against your skin, leaving behind a film rather than washing it away. You realise quickly that you will never feel truly clean here. The swamp claims you. It paints your skin with tannins and coats your hair with algae. You're becoming part of the landscape, turning the same colour as the shadows. Hunger twists in your stomach, a sharp, cramping reminder that you haven't eaten in hours. In the Great Dismal Swamp, breakfast isn't guaranteed. It has to be caught, gathered, or traded for. You make your way back to the centre of the camp where the smudge pot has been, stoked into a small, careful cooking fire. The smoke is kept low, dissipated by a layer of damp moss placed over the flames. You don't want a column of smoke alerting the outside world. Someone hands you a piece of ash cake. It's a simple patty made of cornmeal and water, wrapped in leaves and buried in the hot ashes to cook. You unwrap the charred leaves. The cake is dense, heavy as a stone, and tastes of smoke and earth. It is dry, sucking the moisture from your mouth as you chew, but it sits heavy in your stomach, quieting the hunger pangs. While you eat, you look around at the others. They are already working. Survival here isn't just about hiding, it's about industry. The swamp is a resource, and the Maroons have learned to harvest it. You watch a man near the edge of the high ground. He's standing knee-deep in the mud, wielding a heavy iron tool called a froe. He's splitting a massive cypress log into shingles. The wood is rot-resistant, valuable to the people in the cities outside the swamp. You see the rhythm of his work. He sets the blade, strikes it with a wooden mallet, and tears the wood apart. Thwack, crack, thwack, crack. It is gruelling labour. The logs are waterlogged and immensely heavy. To move them, the men have dug canals, narrow ditches filled with swamp water that allow them to float the timber from the deep interior to the edges of the swamp where it can be traded. You realise with a jolt that this is a hidden economy. The very people who escaped the forced labour of the plantations are now working harder than ever, but on their own terms. You finish your ash cake and are handed a froe. It is heavy, the handle polished smooth by the sweat of the person who held it before you. You are directed to a fallen cedar tree. The bark is rough, scratching your palms. You have to strip it away before you can split the wood. You strike the wood. The sound is muffled by the dense fog, but it still feels too loud to your ears. You pause, listening. Is that a dog barking in the distance, or just the call of a heron? You hold your breath, your heart hammering against your ribs. The silence of the swamp returns, broken only by the buzzing of insects. You strike again. The smell of fresh cedar chips fills the air, a sharp, clean scent that cuts through the odour of the mud. Your shoulders burn, your feet are numb in the cold water. But you keep working. You split one shingle, then another. The wood is stubborn, fighting you every inch of the way. Splinters dig into your fingers, tiny shards of pain that you have to ignore. This is your day. There is no clock to watch, no bell to ring. There is only the pile of wood in front of you and the position of the sun, which is currently just a pale, diffused glow behind the fog. You work until your hands cramp into claws. You work until the sweat runs into your eyes, stinging with salt. You look down at your boots. They're unrecognisable, caked in a layer of grey clay that has begun to dry and crack. You try to wiggle your toes, but the leather has shrunk in the dampness, pinching your feet. You wonder if your feet will ever be dry again. You wonder if you will ever sleep in a bed that doesn't sway when you move. But then you look up. Through a break in the canopy, a single shaft of sunlight pierces the fog, illuminating the floating dust motes and the steam rising from the blackwater. For a second, the swamp isn't a prison. It's a cathedral of trees and water, vast and ancient. You take a breath, tasting the cedar and the damp earth. You are tired, you are sore, but you are here. The sun climbs higher, burning off the last of the fog, but it brings no relief. Instead, the swamp transforms into a steam room. The heat is physical, a heavy blanket that wraps around your neck and suffocates your pores. You can feel the sweat trickling down your spine, soaking the waistband of your trousers, but it never evaporates. The air is already saturated with moisture. Your skin stays clammy, slick, and uncomfortable. You set down the froe, your hands trembling slightly from the repetitive impact. It is time to check the snares. Hunting in the swamp isn't about chasing game. It's about outweighting it. You follow a faint trail along a ridge of higher ground, careful not to disturb the undergrowth. The ground here feels different. It's spongy, bouncing slightly under your weight like a thick carpet laid over water. You keep your eyes on the roots of the tupelo trees. You're looking for movement, for the twitch of a raccoon's nose or the ripple of a muskrat swimming. You find the first snare. It is empty, the loop of braided vine hanging limp. You reset it, your fingers clumsy with mud. The smell here is intense, decaying leaves, wet fur, and the metallic scent of standing water. The second snare holds a prize, a large opossum caught by the leg. It is still alive, hissing at you with bared teeth. You feel a pang of sympathy, but your stomach growls, a sharp reminder that empathy is a luxury you cannot afford. You dispatch it quickly, efficiently. The fur is coarse under your hand, greasy and warm. You tie it to your belt, the weight a comforting promise of dinner. As you walk back, you hear a splash. It's too heavy for a fish. You freeze. In the water, just a few feet away, a pair of eyes watches you. An alligator. It floats motionless, looking like a drifting log, only the ridges of its back breaking the surface. You can smell the musk coming off it, a primal, dangerous scent. You don't run. Running triggers the chase instinct. You back away slowly, never taking your eyes off the water. The alligator doesn't move. It just watches, a prehistoric sentinel guarding the canals. You realise then that you are not at the top of the food chain here. You are just another visitor in a world that belongs to scales and teeth. You return to the camp, your heart rate slowly returning to normal. The others are gathering for the midday meal. It is a communal affair, everyone contributing what they caught or gathered. Someone has found wild grapes, small and tart, their skins tough. Someone else has caught a few catfish from the deep water. You roast the opossum over the low fire. The fat drips into the coals, sizzling and sending up puffs of savoury smoke. You tear off a piece of meat. It is gamey, stringy, and tastes of the swamp, but to you, it is delicious. You eat with your hands, wiping the grease on your trousers. There is little talk. Energy is precious. But there is a sense of shared purpose. You look at the faces around the fire. Scars mark their skin, whip marks on backs, burns on arms, the calluses of hard labour. But their eyes are different. They are alert, not beaten. They look at you, and you see recognition. You are all survivors of a system that tried to break you, and now you are surviving a landscape that tries to drown you. After the meal, the work shifts. The heat of the day makes heavy labour dangerous, so you move to tasks that can be done in the shade. You sit with a group weaving baskets from river cane. The cane is sharp. If you aren't careful, it slices your fingers like paper. You learn to strip the leaves, to soak the stalks until they are pliable. Your hands are stained green from the chlorophyll. The repetitive motion is soothing, almost hypnotic. Over, under, pull tight. Over, under, pull tight. You're making something useful, something that will hold fish or carry berries. It feels good to create, to build something that is yours. But the insects return. The midday lull is over, and the biting flies emerge. They are larger than the mosquitoes, triangles of black wings that land silently and take a chunk of skin before you even feel them. You slap your arm, leaving a smear of blood. "Mud," the woman next to you whispers. She points to the clay bank. "Cover yourself." You do. You smear the grey clay over your arms, your neck, your face. It feels cool and heavy as it dries, tightening your skin. It cracks when you smile, but it creates a barrier. You look around and see that everyone else has done the same. You're a community of mud statues, grey ghosts blending into the grey trunks of the trees. The sun begins its slow descent, filtering through the leaves in dapples of gold and green. The light is beautiful, deceptive. It hides the snakes coiled in the branches above you. It hides the sinkholes waiting beneath the ferns. You finish the basket. It is lopsided, imperfect, but it holds together. You place it with the others. Tonight, these will be loaded onto a flat-bottom punt boat and poled silently through the canals to the edge of the swamp. There, a free black man or a sympathetic white trader will exchange them for powder, shot, and salt. The economy of the swamp is silent, invisible. It relies on trust and signals. A rag tied to a tree branch, a bird call that sounds just a little too rhythmic. You are learning the language of the hidden. As the shadows lengthen, the temperature begins to drop again. The mist starts to reform, rising from the water like steam. You can feel the dampness creeping back into your clothes, making the fabric heavy. You shiver just once. The night is coming, and with it the darkness that swallows everything. You prepare your mind for another long wait in the dark, listening to the breathing of the swamp, hoping that tonight the only thing that finds you is sleep. The sun dips below the cypress canopy, and instantly the colour of the world shifts. The vibrant greens turn to bruised purples. The water changes from tea-brown to ink black. The sounds change too. The daytime birds fall silent, replaced by the chirping of crickets that grows louder and louder until it becomes a solid wall of noise. You're preparing your sleeping platform again. This time, you check the lashings. You noticed a slight sway last night, a looseness in the vines holding the logs together. You reinforce it with strips of tough bark, your fingers working by feel in the fading light. A collapse in the night means falling into the muck, waking up wet and vulnerable to whatever is swimming beneath you. As you work, you notice a new smell drifting on the breeze. It's faint, barely there, but unmistakable. Wood smoke. Not the controlled, moss-dampened smoke of your camp smudge pots, but something sharper, hotter. You freeze. Everyone freezes. The woman weaving baskets stops mid-motion. The man cleaning the fish lays his knife down silently. Heads turn toward the wind. "Trackers," someone whispers. The word hangs in the humid air like a curse. Trackers don't come alone. They come with dogs. Bloodhounds trained to follow the scent of fear and sweat. You don't panic. Panic makes you loud. Panic makes you run blindly into a sinkhole. Instead, you move with deliberate slowness. You gather your few belongings, the knife, the water gourd, the piece of dried meat. You leave the heavy things, the baskets, the shingles. They can be replaced. You cannot. The leader of your group, a man named Cyrus who has lived in the swamp for 10 years, signals toward the water. You understand. The land leaves tracks. The mud holds footprints like a mould. But the water washes everything away. You step off the high ground and into the canal. The water is cold, shocking your system. It rises to your waist, then your chest. The bottom is slimy with decaying leaves, and your feet sink inches into the silt with every step. You have to move carefully, sliding your feet forward rather than lifting them, to avoid splashing. You wade deeper into the cypress forest. The trees here grow directly out of the water, their flared bases creating a maze of wooden pillars. You press yourself against the trunk of a massive cypress, the bark rough against your cheek. The water laps at your chin. You hold your breath. In the distance you hear it, the baying of hounds. It's a lonely, terrifying sound that echoes off the water, making it impossible to tell how far away they are. Are they a mile out, or just around the bend? The sound gets louder. You can hear the shouts of men now, the crashing of brush as they force their way through the undergrowth. They are frustrated. The swamp fights them too. The thorns tear at their clothes, the mud sucks at their boots. But they have lanterns. You see the beams of light cutting through the trees, sweeping back and forth like searching eyes. They are close enough that you can smell the oil burning in their lamps. You sink lower until only your nose and eyes are above the surface. The water is teeming with life. Tiny fish nibble at your clothes. Something brushes against your leg. A turtle? A snake? You don't move. You clamp your jaw shut to keep your teeth from chattering. The cold is seeping into your bones, numbing your extremities. A dog bursts through the brush on the bank opposite you. It sniffs the air, whining. It paces back and forth, confused. The water has broken the scent trail. It barks, a sharp, frustrated sound. "Anything?" a man's voice calls out, rough and angry. "Lost it at the water," another replies. "Damn swamp swallows everything." The lantern light sweeps over the water, passing right over your head. You close your eyes, praying the reflection doesn't give you away. You're just a bump on a log. You're just a shadow in the water. They linger for what feels like hours. You can hear them arguing about direction, about the heat, about the bugs. The mosquitoes are feasting on them, and for once you're grateful for the insects. They're distracting your hunters. Finally, the voices fade. The lights retreat back the way they came. The dog's barking grows distant, then stops. But you don't move. Not yet. Cyrus taught you that trackers sometimes double back, waiting in silence for their prey to reveal itself. You wait. The water grows colder. Your muscles begin to cramp, locking up in painful knots. You focus on your breathing. Slow, shallow breaths. In through the nose, out through the nose. You count the heartbeats. 100, 500, 1,000. Only when the moon is high overhead, casting a silver path across the black water, does a soft whistle cut through the air. A bird call, 3 short notes, the all clear. You drag yourself out of the water, your clothes heavy as lead. You're shivering violently now, your body's reserves of heat completely drained. You crawl onto a dry root mass, water pooling around you. You are alive. You haven't been caught. But the camp is compromised. You can't go back there tonight. You have to find a new spot, somewhere deeper, somewhere darker. You stand up, your legs shaking, you wring out your shirt, the water splashing loudly in the silence. It doesn't matter now. The trackers are gone, but the swamp remains, and it is waiting. You start walking again, deeper into the interior, guided only by the moss on the trees and the stars peeking through the canopy. You're cold, wet, and exhausted, but you are free, and in the Great Dismal Swamp, that is the only thing that matters. You're walking, but it feels more like wading through a dream. The exhaustion has made the edges of your vision blur. The trees seem to lean in, their Spanish moss draping down like tattered grey curtains, brushing against your face with a touch that feels startlingly like spider webs. You're moving toward the heart. That's what the older Maroons call the centre of the swamp. It is a place few trackers dare to go. The water is deeper there, the snakes thicker, the ground almost non-existent. It is a sanctuary built on the idea that if a place is terrible enough, no one will follow you into it. Your feet find a rhythm. Squelch, pull, step, squelch, pull, step. You're learning to read the mud with your soles. If it feels gritty, there are roots nearby, stability. If it feels too smooth, like oil, it's a deep pocket of silt that could trap you. You test every step before committing your weight. The group is silent. Communication is now entirely nonverbal. A hand raised means stop. A finger pointing down means watch your step, snake. A touch on the shoulder means keep going, I've got you. You reach a section where the water is waist deep again, but this time there are no trees to hold on to. Just a vast expanse of sawgrass rising out of the black mirror. The grass is tall, 6 feet or more, with edges sharp enough to slice skin. You have to push through it, using your arms to part the stalks. The sound is loud here. The rustling of the grass is a constant shh that masks any other noise. You feel a stinging sensation on your arm. A leech. You don't stop. Stopping in the sawgrass means losing your momentum. You'll deal with the leech later. For now, it's just another passenger. Suddenly the ground under your lead foot gives way completely. You pitch forward, water rushing into your nose and mouth. It tastes foul, rotting vegetation and stagnancy. You flail, your hands grasping for purchase, but finding only water and slick roots. A hand grabs the back of your shirt. It yanks you backward, hard. You come up sputtering, coughing up swamp water. It's Cyrus. He doesn't say a word. He just holds you steady until you find your footing again. He points to the right, indicating a slightly higher ridge of mud hidden beneath the water. You nod, shivering. That was close. A sinkhole. You finally emerge from the sawgrass onto a small island. It's tiny, barely 20 feet across, but it feels like a continent. There is a single, massive oak tree in the centre, its roots gnarled and spreading like a giant hand gripping the earth. This is the new camp. There are no platforms here yet, no smudge pots, just the raw, wet earth. You collapse onto the roots of the oak, not caring about the dampness. You are safe for now, but safety brings a new problem. The cold. You're soaked to the bone, and without a fire, hypothermia is a real threat. You huddle together with the others. Body heat is a resource, shared freely. You sit back to back with a stranger, feeling their warmth seep into your chilled skin. You wrap your arms around your knees, tucking your chin to your chest to conserve heat. The night stretches on. You drift in and out of a light doze. Every time you wake, you check your body. Are your toes numb? Can you feel your fingers? You wiggle them constantly, keeping the blood flowing. Morning comes slowly, a grey lightening of the sky that reveals the true desolation of your new home. The water surrounds you on all sides, a moat of black glass. But in the light, you see something else. Berries. Growing on vines, tangled in the lower branches of the oak tree, are clusters of dark purple berries. Muscadines. You stand up, your legs stiff and aching, and reach for a handful. You pop one into your mouth. The skin is thick and tough, but when you bite down, the inside is sweet and tart. It tastes like life. You gather more, sharing them with the group. It isn't a meal, but it's energy. It's a start. Cyrus signals to the group. It's time to build. You can't sleep on the roots forever. You need shelter. You need to get off the ground. You start gathering fallen branches, stripping the smaller twigs to make lashing. You find a patch of broad-leafed plants, palmettos. Their leaves are waterproof, durable. They will be your roof. The work warms you up. You forget the cold, the damp, the fear. You're building a home. It won't be a cabin with a fireplace. It won't have windows or doors. It will be a lean-to, a platform, a nest. But it will be yours. You're no longer just running. You're establishing a foothold. You're proving that you can exist in a place where existence seems impossible. You look at the water surrounding your tiny island, and for the first time, it doesn't look like a trap. It looks like a wall that keeps the world out. You are holding a cypress branch, feeling the rough texture of the bark dig into your palm. It is heavy, waterlogged, but strong. This will be the corner post of your new shelter. You drive it into the soft earth, using a heavy stone to hammer it down until it hits the root layer beneath the mud. It holds firm. The construction is simple but ingenious. You aren't building walls to keep the weather out. You are building a roof to keep the rain off. The humidity is inescapable, but staying dry during the frequent downpours is critical. You and the others work in silence, a coordinated rhythm of chopping, lashing and lifting. You learn to weave palmetto fronds. It's a specific technique. Overlap the stems, tuck the broad leaves under, pull tight. Done correctly, it creates a thatched surface that sheds water like a duck's back. Done poorly, and you'll wake up soaked. You watch an older woman named Sarah. Her hands are scarred and twisted with arthritis, yet they move with fluid grace. She doesn't look at her hands. She looks at the sky, reading the clouds. Rain coming, she murmurs. Her voice is raspy, like dry leaves rubbing together. Tighten the lashings, you redouble your efforts. The sky is indeed darkening, bruising purple and grey. The wind picks up, rustling the canopy overhead. The smell of ozone, sharp and electric, cuts through the swamp rot. The first drops are heavy and loud, slapping against the water and the leaves. Then the sky opens up. It isn't rain, it is a deluge, a wall of water that turns the world grey. You scramble under your half-finished shelter. The roof holds, mostly. A few drips make it through, cold and startling, but the main torrent is diverted. You sit huddled with Sarah and Cyrus, watching the rain turn the swamp into a churning sea. The water level rises visibly, creeping up the bank of your tiny island. You watch a small snake, a brown water snake, slither up onto a log near your shelter, seeking higher ground. You don't shoo it away. In the storm, everyone is just trying to stay dry. "This is why we build high," Cyrus says, his voice barely audible over the roar of the rain. He points to the water creeping toward your boots. The swamp breathes, in and out, up and down. You have to move with it. The storm passes as quickly as it arrived, leaving behind a dripping, steaming world. The sun comes out fierce and hot, turning the rainwater into rising vapour. The humidity spikes. It feels like you are breathing soup. But the rain has brought a gift. The water level has risen enough to flood the shallow pools near the island. And with the flood come the fish. You see them darting in the shallows, gar, with their long toothy snouts, and bowfin, prehistoric-looking fish that can breathe air. You grab a sharpened stick you prepared earlier. Spearfishing is about patience and refraction. The fish isn't where it looks like it is. The water bends the light. You have to aim lower. You stand motionless, ignoring the mosquitoes settling on your neck. You wait. A gar drifts closer, sluggish in the warm water. You strike. You miss. The spear hits the mud with a dull thud. The fish vanishes in a swirl of silt. You curse under your breath, resetting. You try again and again. Your arm aches. Your frustration mounts, but you can't stop. The muscadines were a snack. This is a meal. Finally you connect. The spear vibrates in your hand. You lift it, and a thrashing bowfin breaks the surface. It's ugly, slippery, and magnificent. You bring it to shore, your hands shaking with adrenaline. Cleaning the fish is messy work. You use a sharp shell to scale it, the scales flying like silver confetti. You gut it, tossing the entrails into the water. Within seconds the water boils with movement. Turtles, tiny fish. The swamp wastes nothing. You cook the fish wrapped in mud and leaves, steaming it in its own juices. When you peel back the skin, the meat is white and flaky. You eat it hot, burning your fingers. It tastes of the water, earthy and rich. It is the best thing you have ever tasted. That night, full for the first time in days, you lie on your new platform. The palmetto roof is above you. The fire is a low smoulder. You listen to the night sounds, the crickets, the owls, the distant splash of a gator. You think about the world outside, the plantations, the overseers, the constant fear of the lash. It feels distant now, like a nightmare you're slowly waking up from. Here, the fear is different. It is primal. It is the fear of hunger, of cold, of predators. But it is a fear you can fight. You can build a shelter. You can catch a fish. You can survive. You run your hand over the rough wood of the platform. This is your home now. It isn't much, but it is free. You're sitting on the edge of your platform, your legs dangling over the murky water. The morning light is filtering through the dense canopy, casting dappled shadows on the swamp surface. It's a deceptive piece. You know that beneath the stillness the swamp is always moving, always changing. Today, Cyrus gathers everyone. He holds a piece of charred wood in his hand and points to a faint trail leading away from the island. It's barely visible, just a slight depression in the moss and a few bent reeds. "We need salt," he says quietly, "and iron. Salt is life. Without it, in this heat, your muscles cramp and your mind goes foggy. Iron means tools, knives, axes, fish hooks. You cannot make these things in the swamp. You have to trade for them. You are chosen to go with Cyrus. It is a mark of trust, but also a burden. You are leaving the safety of the heart to venture back toward the edges, toward the world of men and dogs. You pack light, a gourd of water, a strip of dried fish, and a small bundle of shingles you've split over the last few days. This is your currency. The world outside needs wood that doesn't rot. You move differently now. You don't trudge, you slide. You step on roots, not mud. You duck under low-hanging branches without breaking your stride. You're becoming a creature of the swamp. The journey takes hours. The terrain changes constantly. 1 minute you're wading through knee-deep water. The next you're scrambling over a tangle of fallen trees that form a natural bridge. You see snakes, cottonmouths coiled on logs, their mouths gaping white in warning. You give them a wide berth. They are not aggressive unless provoked, but their venom rots flesh. Finally you reach the edge. The trees thin out, replaced by tall reeds. You can smell the change in the air, wood smoke, livestock, and the faint sweet scent of tobacco. You're close to a canal, one of the man-made waterways dug by enslaved labourers to drain the swamp. You wait in the reeds until dusk. The canal is a highway. Flatboats pole up and down, carrying timber and supplies. You watch them pass. The men on the boats look tired, their shoulders slumped. You recognise the look. It was yours once. Cyrus makes a sound, a low rhythmic whistle that mimics a nightjar. A boat slows down. The polar, a large man with a straw hat pulled low, looks toward the reeds. He doesn't stop, but he drifts closer to the bank. You wade out, keeping low. The water comes up to your chin. You reach up and place the bundle of shingles on the edge of the boat. The polar doesn't look at you. He reaches into a sack at his feet and drops a small, heavy bag onto the bank. Then he pushes off, the boat gliding away into the gloom. You retrieve the bag. It is heavy, salt, and wrapped inside a piece of oilcloth, a handful of iron nails, and a small knife. It is a successful trade. But as you turn back toward the swamp, you hear it. A voice. "Hey, who's there?" It's an overseer walking the towpath along the canal. He has a lantern. The beam sweeps over the water, catching the ripples you made. You freeze. If you run, the splashing will give you away. If you stay, the light might find you. You sink slowly into the water until your ears are submerged. You tilt your head back, leaving only your nose and mouth exposed. The light sweeps over you. It pauses. You stare up at the sky, willing your heart to slow down. You can feel the vibration of the man's footsteps on the bank. He is close. Too close. "Just a gator," he mutters, turning away. "Damn swamp is full of them." He walks on. You wait until his footsteps fade completely before you surface. You're shaking, the adrenaline crash leaving you weak. Cyrus is waiting for you in the reeds. He puts a hand on your shoulder. It is steadying. You walk back in silence. The salt bag is heavy against your hip, but it feels like gold. You have ventured to the edge of the world and returned. You have traded with the enemy and survived. When you reach the camp, it is deep night. The others are waiting. You hand over the salt and the nails. There is no applause, no celebration. Just quiet nods of approval. The salt is divided immediately, each person taking a pinch to lick off their palm. The taste is sharp, intense, and incredibly satisfying. You lie down on your platform, the taste of salt still on your tongue. You listen to the cicadas, the frogs, the wind in the trees. You are tired, but you are not afraid. You know the swamp now. You know its dangers, its rhythms, its secrets. And you know that as long as you respect it, as long as you listen to it, it will hide you. You close your eyes. Tomorrow you will use the nails to build a better shelter. Tomorrow you will use the salt to cure more fish. Tomorrow you will live. You're sitting cross-legged on your platform, staring at the small iron knife in your hand. It isn't much, a blade barely 3 inches long, the handle wrapped in rough leather. But here, it is a key to a kingdom. With this, you can skin game, carve tools, and defend yourself. It feels heavy with possibility. The morning is quieter than usual. The heavy humidity has muffled the sounds of the birds, and the air feels thick, pregnant with another storm. You wipe a bead of sweat from your forehead. Even sitting still is an effort in this heat. Cyrus approaches you. He moves silently, his feet finding the solid root masses without looking. He sits beside you and points to the water. Turtle, he says. You look. A snapping turtle, its shell the size of a dinner plate, is sunning itself on a log near the edge of the island. Its beak is sharp, capable of taking off a finger. Its neck is long and wrinkled, looking like a snake emerging from a rock. Meat, Cyrus adds, and shell. You understand. The meat is food, rich and fatty. The shell can be a bowl, a scoop, a shield. But catching a snapping turtle is dangerous work. They are fast in the water and aggressive on land. You take your new knife and a sturdy stick. You slip into the water, moving slowly. You don't want to startle it. You approach from behind, keeping the log between you and its head. The water is warm today, almost hot. It teems with tadpoles and minnows that tickle your legs. You ignore them. Your focus is entirely on the turtle. You reach the log. The turtle hasn't moved. You take a breath, lunging forward to grab the back of its shell. It hisses, a sound like escaping steam, and snaps its head back with terrifying speed. The jaws clamp shut on the stick you held out as a distraction, splintering the wood. You use the moment to hoist it out of the water, keeping your hands well away from the head. It is heavy, thrashing its legs, its claws scratching at the air. You carry it back to camp, careful not to trip. One slip, and that beak could find your leg. Processing the turtle takes hours. You have to be careful not to puncture the musk glands, or the meat will be ruined. You use your new knife, grateful for the sharp edge. The meat is dark and dense. You stew it with wild onions and the last of the salt. While the stew simmers, you clean the shell. You scrape away the membrane, polishing the inside with sand until it is smooth. It will make a perfect basin for holding water or mixing clay. That evening, as you eat the turtle stew, you feel a new sensation. Pride. You didn't just survive today, you thrived. You took a dangerous creature and turned it into sustenance and a tool. You are adapting. But the swamp has a way of humbling you just when you feel confident. That night, you wake up to a burning sensation on your leg. You slap at it in the dark, thinking it's a mosquito. But the burning spreads. It feels like someone has pressed a hot coal against your skin. You scramble for ember from the fire pit, blowing on it until it glows. In the dim light you see them, fire ants, a trail of them marching across your platform, drawn by the scent of the turtle meat residue on your clothes. You brush them off frantically, crushing them against the wood. They bite as they die, leaving welts that swell instantly. The pain is intense, a throbbing heat that makes your eyes water. You strip off your trousers and shake them over the water. You check your bedding, sweeping it clear. The ants are relentless. You have to move your platform. You and the others spend the next hour in the dark unlashing the logs and moving them to a different tree, away from the ant trail. By the time you settle back down, your leg is on fire. You apply cool mud to the bites, sighing as the wet clay draws out some of the heat. It is a harsh lesson. In the swamp, even the smallest creatures can hurt you. You can never let your guard down, not for a second. You lie awake for a long time listening to the hum of the insects. The pain in your leg throbs in time with your heartbeat. But you are alive. The ants didn't kill you. The turtle didn't bite you. The trackers didn't find you. You look up at the canopy. The leaves are black lace against the dark blue sky. You can see a single star through a gap. It is bright and steady, a pinprick of light in the overwhelming darkness. You focus on that star. You imagine others looking at it. People in the cities, people on the ships, people back on the plantations. They are looking at the same star, but they are in a different world. Your world is mud and water and fire ants, but it is yours. You close your eyes. The pain in your leg fades to a dull ache. The rhythm of the swamp takes over, lulling you into a fitful sleep. Tomorrow, you will find a way to keep the ants away. Tomorrow, you will be smarter. Tomorrow, you will survive. You wake to a sensation of heaviness in your leg. The ant bites have swollen into hard, angry knots that throb in time with your pulse. You resist the urge to scratch. Scratching leads to infection. An infection in this humidity means gangrene. Instead, you press a handful of cool, wet moss against the welts. The moss smells like old rain and deep earth, a soothing, ancient scent that momentarily distracts you from the itching. The morning air is different today. It is still heavy, still suffocatingly humid, but there is a stillness to it that feels deliberate. Cyrus is already awake, crouching by the edge of the island, staring into the brown water. He isn't looking for fish this time. He is looking at the mud itself. We cannot live on turtle and opossum forever, he says without turning around. The winter will come, the game will hide. We need roots. You understand what he means. Farming. But looking around at the endless expanse of black water and tangled roots, the idea seems absurd. Where do you plant? The ground is either underwater or made of tree roots. Cyrus stands and hands you a large flat shell, a river mussel shell the size of a saucer, honed to a sharp edge against a stone. It is your shovel. Follow. You leave the main island, wading through a stretch of water that smells of sulphur, rotten eggs and decay. The bottom here is soft, sucking at your boots until you feel like you're walking through molasses. You reach a slightly elevated patch of land, a hammock rising from the swamp. It is covered in briars and ferns, a chaotic tangle of green. This is the garden. Or it will be. The work is agonizingly slow. You cannot simply clear the land. A clearing is visible from a distance. A clearing says people live here. So, you have to farm in the shadows. You leave the tall trees, the gums and the maples, standing to provide canopy cover. You only clear the underbrush, hacking away the vines and ferns with your knife and tearing them out by the roots. The soil here is rich, almost black. It is peat. Thousands of years of decayed plant matter compressed into nutrient-dense earth. But it is also acidic. You have to mix it. Cyrus directs you to drag up buckets of grey clay from the creek bed. The clay is heavy, slick and cool against your skin. You mix it with the peat, using your hands to knead the earth like dough. The texture is strange, gritty, slimy and fibrous all at once. You work until your fingernails are packed with black soil, until your arms feel like lead weights. The smell of the turned earth is overpowering, a deep musk scent of fertility and rot. You're planting sweet potatoes and corn. But you don't plant them in neat European rows. Rows are a dead giveaway. Rows look like a plantation. Instead, you plant in clusters, hiding the crops among the natural vegetation. A stalk of corn here, disguised by tall reeds, a mound of potatoes there, hidden beneath the sprawling leaves of a fern. It is guerrilla gardening. You're camouflaging your survival. As you dig, you uncover things. A layer of charcoal from a forest fire decades ago. A deer antler gnawed by rodents. Evidence that the swamp has a history. Layers of time stacking up like the mud. By midday, the heat is a physical weight. The canopy traps the humidity, turning your workspace into a greenhouse. You can barely breathe. The air feels solid, water vapour condensing in your lungs with every inhale. You pause to drink from your gourd, the tannic water tasting warm and woody. Sarah joins you, carrying a pouch of seeds. She treats them like diamonds. These seeds were smuggled in, carried in pockets and hem linings, hidden from overseers. They are a link to the past and a promise for the future. She places 3 corn seeds in the mound you have prepared. She pats the earth down gently, whispering a few words you don't catch. It feels like a prayer. The corn grows tall, she says, wiping sweat from her eyes. It watches for us. You realise that this garden is more than food. It is a clock. It marks the passage of time in a place where days bleed into nights without distinction. The corn will sprout, the potatoes will swell, the seasons will change. It gives you a timeline beyond just surviving until the next sunrise. But the swamp is jealous. It wants to reclaim the land. You have to dig drainage ditches around the mounds to keep the roots from rotting in the standing water. You use the mussel shell to carve channels in the mud, directing the flow. The water is dark, oily, swirling with tannins. You watch it drain away, leaving the soil damp but not soaked. By late afternoon, you are covered in a layer of mud that has dried into a grey second skin. It cracks when you move, pulling at the fine hairs on your arms. You're exhausted, your back screaming from hours of bending over. But you look at the patch of worked earth, hidden beneath the trees, and you feel a fierce sense of ownership. You didn't just find this land, you made it. You carved it out of the chaos. That evening the insects are worse than usual. A high-pitched whine that drills into your ears. You sit in the smoke of the smudge pot, rubbing your aching leg. The ant bites have stopped throbbing, replaced by a dull, insistent itch. You eat the last of the dried fish, chewing slowly. It is salty and tough, but you're too tired to care. You watch the firelight dance on the faces of your companions. They look different tonight. less like fugitives, more like settlers. You lie down on your platform, the smell of turned earth still clinging to your hands. You hold your hands up to your face, breathing it in. It smells like potential. It smells like tomorrow. You close your eyes, and for the first time, you don't dream of running. You dream of green shoots pushing up through black mud. You dream of a harvest. Weeks have passed, marked not by a calendar, but by the healing of the blisters on your hands and the changing waterline against the cypress trunks. The corn you planted has pushed green spikes through the black soil, hidden amidst the ferns. But today, the challenge isn't food, it is mobility. You're standing at the edge of the hammock, looking out across a stretch of open water that separates your island from the next patch of high ground. It is 100 yards of deep, sucking mud and waist-high water. To cross it means 30 minutes of exhausting, noisy wading, exposing yourself to the sun, the insects and the eyes of anyone watching from the canal edge. Cyrus stands beside you, holding a long pole of seasoned cypress. He taps the water surface. It ripples, dark and oily. We cannot swim every time we need to move, he says. We need a road, but a road that no one else can see. You begin the construction of a submerged causeway. It is a feat of engineering born of paranoia and brilliance. If you build a bridge above the water, the trackers will see it. If you build a path of dry earth, the dogs will smell it. So, you build a road that exists 6 inches below the surface. The work is heavy. You and the others spend days felling smaller gum trees and saplings deep in the interior where the sound of the axe won't carry. You strip the branches, leaving long, straight poles. Then comes the hauling. You drag the timber through the water, the wood bumping against your legs, the bark scraping your skin raw. You lay the logs perpendicular to the direction of the path, creating what is known as a corduroy road. But instead of resting them on top of the mud, you stomp them down. You stand on the logs, your weight forcing them into the soft silt until they vanish beneath the dark water. You secure them with stakes driven deep into the clay at angles, locking the logs in place. The water clouds with sediment, a swirling brown fog that hides your work. You're working blind, feeling the alignment of the logs with your bare feet. The sensation is strange. You're building a solid structure, but looking at it, there is nothing there. Just an expanse of unbroken water. Memorize the markers, Sarah tells you. She points to a specific knot on a cypress tree, then to a cluster of cattails 50 yards away. Line them up. That is your path. Deviate left, you sink. Deviate right, you swim. You test it. You step out off the solid ground of the island and onto the water. Your boot sinks through the surface, and for a heart-stopping second, you expect to plunge into the muck. But then your sole hits the solid wood of the submerged log. You stand there, seemingly floating on the water, your ankles wet but your footing firm. You take a step, then another. It requires a specific gait, a gliding shuffle to keep your balance on the slick wood. You're walking across the treacherous gap in minutes, moving silently, leaving no trace behind you but ripples that fade in seconds. To an outsider, you look like a ghost walking on water. To a tracker, you are simply gone. The dogs cannot smell your trail through the water. The boats cannot pass because the water is too shallow over the logs. It is a defensive moat and a highway rolled into one. But building it takes a toll. The water softens your skin until it turns white and wrinkled, prone to tearing at the slightest touch. Leeches are a constant presence. You learn to pause every hour to check your legs, scraping off the black ribbons of flesh before they can latch on too tightly. You use a mixture of ash and grease to coat your legs, a barrier that helps but doesn't stop them entirely. The smell of the disturbed mud is pungent, a release of methane and rotting organic matter that bubbled up from the depths. It makes you dizzy if you breathe it in too deeply. You learn to breathe through your mouth, tasting the air rather than smelling it. By late afternoon, the causeway's finished. You stand on the far side, looking back at the island. There is no sign of your labour. The water is smooth, the secrets hidden beneath the tannin-stained surface. That evening, a summer storm rolls in, heavy with thunder. Usually you would huddle in the shelter, but tonight Cyrus signals for a movement drill. You need to know you can use the path in the chaos of a storm. You step out, onto the submerged logs. The rain lashes the water, turning the surface into a chaotic froth. You can't see the bottom. You can barely see the marker trees through the downpour. You have to trust your feet. You have to trust the map you've built in your mind. You slip once, your foot sliding off the log into the deep mud. Panic flares, the mud grips your ankle like a vice. But you find the log again, Leverage yourself up and keep moving. When you reach the other side, you are soaked, shivering and exhausted. But you are also invisible. You realize that you have effectively expanded your world. You are no longer trapped on one island. The swamp is becoming a network, a connected fortress where you can move and the enemy cannot. You wring out your shirt, the water pooling at your feet. The storm rages above, but down here, amidst the roots and the water, you have built a way forward. You are engineering your own freedom, one sunken log at a time. You wake up, but the ground is vibrating. At first you think it's an earthquake, or perhaps a herd of animals moving through the underbrush. Then you realize the vibration is coming from inside you. Your teeth are clattering together so hard your jaw aches. You're freezing, yet your skin is radiating heat like a furnace stone. It is the ague, swamp fever, malaria. It has many names, but out here, it is simply the price of living in a cloud of mosquitoes. You try to sit up, but the world spins violently. The cypress canopy above you twists into a green vortex. You collapse back onto the hard wood of the platform. Your sweat soaks the rough fabric of your shirt, turning it cold and clammy against your skin. You feel weak, defenseless, a liability. Sarah is there instantly. She doesn't look worried. She looks determined. In the swamp, sickness is just another predator to be fought. She places a cool hand on your forehead. Her skin feels like dry leather, rough but gentle. Quiet, she whispers. The fever makes you talk loud. We can't have noise. That is the terrifying reality of illness here. It isn't just about dying. It's about the noise of dying. A delirious shout, a racking cough, sound carries over water. If you get too loud, they might have to move you deeper, or worse, silence you. Sarah opens a small pouch at her belt. It smells sharp and spicy, sassafras root. She has dug it from the higher sandy ridges days ago. She takes a piece of the reddish root and shaves it into a gourd of water. She doesn't boil it. A fire would produce heat you don't need right now. Instead, she mashes the shavings with a stone, cold brewing a bitter, aromatic tea. She lifts your head. The liquid is tepid and tastes like dirt and root beer concentrate. It coats your throat, making you gag, but she forces you to swallow. Drink. It thins the blood, cools the fire. Next, she applies the poultice. It is a mixture of crushed willow bark and mud. Willow contains salicin, the same compound found in modern aspirin. She smears the grey paste over your forehead, your chest, and the back of your neck. As the mud dries, it draws the heat out of your skin. It feels like a cold weight pressing you down, anchoring you to the platform. The hours bleed together. You drift in and out of hallucinations. You see the faces of people you left behind on the plantation. You see the dogs chasing you through the water. You see the alligator staring at you with human eyes. At one point you start to shiver so violently that the platform shakes. Cyrus comes over. He doesn't offer sympathy. He lies down next to you, pressing his back against yours, pinning you down with his weight. He piles extra furs, rancid-smelling deer hides, over both of you. It seems counterintuitive to pile furs on a fever, but he is trying to break the chills. You lie there, trapped between the heat of his body and the cold of the mud poultice. You can smell the sweat of the camp, a collective scent of anxiety and labour. By late afternoon the fever breaks. It happens all at once. You wake up drenched, as if you have been dipped in the swamp. The shivering stops. Your mind clears, leaving behind a hollow, wrung-out exhaustion. You sit up weakly. Sarah hands you a piece of honeycomb. It is dark, filled with bee bread and wax. Sugar is energy. You chew the wax, sucking out every drop of sweetness. It is the most intense flavour you have ever experienced. "You lived," Sarah says simply. She is already moving on, weaving another basket. "Now get up. The water is rising." You look over the edge of the platform. She is right. The water level has crept up inches while you were delirious. A distant storm upstream has sent a pulse of floodwater down into the heart of the swamp. The ground below your platform is gone, replaced by swirling brown current. Survival here doesn't pause for recovery. You force your legs to work. You stand up, swaying slightly. You are weaker than before, but you're also harder. You've survived the fever. Your blood now carries the memory of the sickness, and maybe, just maybe, a little bit of resistance for the next time. You pick up your knife. There is work to do. The flood brings debris, logs, branches, sometimes entire trees floating down the channels. You need to snag them. Wood is fuel. Wood is platforms. Wood is the road beneath the water. You wade into the rising water, the coolness soothing your fever-tender skin. You are part of the machine again, a cog in the engine of the swamp. You catch a drifting branch, hauling it toward the island. You're tired, you're sick, you're hunted, but you are still here. You're standing in water up to your chest, your hands gripping a sodden log that feels heavier than lead. The floodwaters are receding, but they have left behind a chaotic mess of tangled debris. Your job is to clear the channel. If the waterway gets blocked, the stagnant pools will expand, breeding even more mosquitoes and cutting off your escape routes. The water is murky, swirling with silt. You can't see your feet. You feel your way along the bottom, testing for sinkholes with every step. Something brushes against your leg, slick, muscular. You freeze. A water moccasin. An eel? It moves on, whatever it is. In the swamp, you learn to share space with things that could kill you. The air is thick with the smell of disturbed mud. A sulphuric, rotten egg stench that clings to the back of your throat. It's the smell of decay being turned over, of ancient plant matter decomposing in the heat. You heave the log onto the bank. Your muscles scream in protest, weakened by the fever, but you ignore them. You are part of a line of men and women passing debris hand to hand. It is a bucket brigade of slime-covered wood. Cyrus is at the head of the line, directing the flow. He spots something tangled in a mass of roots near the bank. It isn't wood, it is a crate. A hush falls over the group. A crate means people. A crate means the outside world has intruded. You wade over, the water lapping at your chin. The wood of the crate is swollen, the iron bands rusted. It looks like it has been in the water for weeks, maybe washed down from a capsized barge on the canal miles away. You help Cyrus pry it loose. It is heavy, sloshing with water. You drag it onto the high ground, the mud sucking at it with a reluctance to let go. Cyrus uses his knife to pry open the lid. The wood splinters easily, soft with rot. Inside, packed in wet straw, are jars, glass jars. Some are broken, shards glinting in the dappled sunlight, but 3 are intact. Pickled pork. The realization hits the group like a physical blow. Meat. Preserved, salty, fatty meat. Not possum, not turtle, not fish. Pork. It is a taste of a life you left behind. A life of oppression, yes, but also of different flavours. Sarah carefully lifts a jar. The brine inside is cloudy, but the seal holds. She wipes the mud from the glass with her thumb. A feast, she whispers, but Cyrus shakes his head. A risk. He points to the markings on the crate. A plantation brand. If trackers are looking for lost cargo, they might follow the debris trail straight to you. We eat it, he says, his voice hard. Tonight, and we burn the crate. No trace. That evening, the camp feels different. The usual tension is replaced by a fierce, almost desperate anticipation. You gather around the small fire. The jar is opened. The smell of vinegar and pork fat wafts out, cutting through the swamp funk. It smells incredibly rich, almost overpowering. Each person gets a piece. You hold yours in your hand, grease-coating your fingers. You take a bite. The texture is soft, melting in your mouth. The salt stings your tongue, waking up taste buds that have gone dormant on a diet of ash cake and fish. It is decadent. It is dangerous. You eat slowly, savouring every chew. For a few minutes, you aren't a fugitive in a swamp. You're just a person enjoying a meal. Afterward, the crate is broken down into splinters. You feed the wood into the fire piece by piece. The flames lick at the plantation brand, turning the symbols of ownership into ash. You watch the smoke rise, carrying the last evidence of the outside world up into the canopy. But the meal has a cost. The salt makes you thirsty, a deep, unquenchable thirst. You drink from your gourd, but the tannic water tastes flat and bitter after the richness of the pork. You spend the night waking up to drink, your belly full but your mouth dry as dust. And then the sound starts. It is a low, rhythmic thumping coming from the north. Thump, thump, thump. It isn't a drum. It is too mechanical, too steady. Cyrus is awake instantly. He crouches by the fire pit, listening. Dredge, he says. The word sends a chill through the camp. A dredge is a machine, a steam-powered monster mounted on a barge. It is used to dig canals to drain the swamp. It eats the land, pulling up trees and mud with giant metal buckets. They are coming closer. The plantation owners aren't just sending dogs anymore, they are sending machines to drain your home, to turn your sanctuary into dry fields for cotton. You realise then that your fight isn't just against the trackers, it is against progress itself. The world outside wants to erase the swamp, to civilise it. And if they drain the water, they drain your freedom. You look at the dark water surrounding your island. It has protected you, fed you, hidden you. Now it is under siege. We move, Cyrus says, deeper. You pack your few belongings. The taste of the pork is gone, replaced by the metallic taste of fear. You slide off the platform into the cool water. The mud grips your feet, familiar and anchoring. You start walking, away from the thump of the machine toward the heart of the darkness where even the steam engines cannot follow. You're a ghost again, moving through a dying world, trying to find a place that hasn't been mapped. You're moving through a section of the swamp the elders call the Devil's Nursery. The trees here are stunted, twisted into shapes that look agonizingly human in the half-light. The water is shallower, but the mud is deeper, a thick grey sludge that smells of sulphur and old bones. The thumping of the dredge has faded behind you, but the vibration still hums in your teeth. You are pushing into territory that even the Maroons usually avoid. This is bear country. You see the signs everywhere. Claw marks raked deep into the cypress bark, higher than your head. Scat filled with berry seeds and fish scales left prominently on logs. The underbrush is trampled in wide, deliberate paths. You walk in a tight formation. Cyrus takes the lead, carrying a spear tipped with a sharpened piece of iron. You bring up the rear, your knife drawn. You aren't hunting, you are trespassing. The heat is suffocating here. The canopy is so dense it traps the humidity like a lid on a pot. Your clothes are soaked, sticking to your skin like a second layer. You can feel the sweat dripping from your nose, stinging your eyes. Suddenly the brush ahead explodes with movement. A black shape, massive and fast, crashes through the reeds. A black bear. It isn't charging, it's fleeing. It scrambles up a cypress tree with surprising agility, its claws tearing into the wood. You freeze. Bears usually run from humans, but a cornered bear is a death sentence. You watch it climb, its breath huffing in short, sharp bursts. It perches on a high branch, staring down at you with small, intelligent eyes. It isn't alone. From the undergrowth comes a mewling sound. Cubs. 2 of them, tumbling over each other in the mud. They're small, fluffy, and completely oblivious to the danger. This is the worst possible scenario. A mother bear protecting her cubs. Cyrus signals for a slow retreat. You back away, step by agonizing step. You don't turn your back. You don't make eye contact. You keep your head lowered, submitting to her territory. The mother bear watches you. She lets out a low, guttural growl that vibrates in your chest. It is a warning, clear as day. Leave. You retreat until the trees block your view of the cubs. Only then do you exhale. Your legs feel like jelly. You have faced trackers, alligators, and fever, but the primal power of that bear was something different. It was a reminder that you are not the masters of this domain. You skirt the bear's territory, adding hours to your journey. The detour takes you through a patch of poccasin, a bog on a hill. The ground is spongy peat, trembling under your feet. It feels like walking on a waterbed. One wrong step and the peat gives way, dropping you into a hidden pocket of water beneath the surface. You reach the new campsite at dusk. It is a small rise, barely dry, surrounded by a thicket of holly trees. The leaves are sharp, prickly, offering a natural barrier. You are exhausted. You haven't eaten since the pork, and the adrenaline crash has left you shaky. But you can't rest yet. The water here is stagnant, covered in a film of green algae. You have to filter it. You use a method Sarah taught you. You dig a hole in the mud about 2 feet from the water's edge. You wait. Slowly, water seeps into the hole, filtering through the soil. It is still brown, still taste of earth, but the worst of the sediment and algae is left behind. You fill your gourd, drinking greedily. As you settle onto the damp ground, wrapping yourself in your cloak against the mosquitoes, you hear a sound that stops your heart. A baby crying. It is faint, distant, but unmistakable. A human infant. You look at Cyrus. His face is grim. There are no babies in your group. This means another group of runaways is nearby, or it means a trap. Trackers have been known to use recordings or even capture children to lure Maroons out of hiding. But the cry is persistent, desperate. It sounds weak. "We check," Cyrus whispers, "but we go armed." You leave the safety of the holly thicket, moving toward the sound. The darkness is absolute. You navigate by touch, feeling the bark of the trees, testing the ground with your toes. The crying grows louder, then stops abruptly, replaced by a frantic shushing sound. You push through a wall of reeds and find them. A woman huddled on a root mass, clutching a bundle to her chest. She's young, barely 20, her eyes wide with terror in the gloom. Her clothes are tatters, her feet bare and bleeding. She sees you and shrinks back, trying to cover the baby's mouth. "Please," she whispers, "don't take us back." She thinks you're a tracker. In the dark, covered in mud, holding a knife, you probably look like a monster. Cyrus steps forward, lowering his spear. He speaks in a low, calm voice, using the dialect of the enslaved, the language of the fields. "We are kin," he says. "We are free." The woman collapses, sobbing silently. You help her up. She is light, wasted away from hunger. The baby is silent now, staring at you with solemn eyes. You bring them back to your camp. You give the woman the last of your water. You watch as Sarah takes the baby, checking it for fever. You realize then that the swamp is filling up. The pressure on the plantations is increasing, driving more people into the wild. The dredge you heard earlier wasn't just a machine. It was a signal that the world is shrinking. You look at the new arrivals. They are weak, loud, and vulnerable. They are a liability, but they are also the reason you are here. To survive is to defy, and saving them is the ultimate act of defiance. You give the woman your sleeping spot on the driest patch of ground. You sit up against a holly tree, your knife in your lap, watching the darkness. You are tired, you are hungry, but you have a job to do. You are a guardian of the swamp now. Dawn arrives not as a burst of light, but as a gradual greying of the mist. You're stiff, your back moulded to the shape of the holly tree's bark. Your legs are numb from sitting cross-legged in the damp soil all night. You try to stand, and your joints pop loudly in the silence. The camp is waking up. The new woman, whose name you learn is Clara, is sitting up, looking around with a dazed expression. She clutches the baby, a boy, tiny and frail, so tightly his knuckles are white against her dark skin. The baby starts to whimper, a high-pitched sound that cuts through the morning quiet like a siren. Sarah moves instantly. She doesn't scold, she simply acts. In the swamp, a crying baby is a beacon for trackers. She reaches into a pouch and pulls out a small piece of cloth soaked in sugar water, likely honey scavenged days ago. She touches it to the baby's lips. He quiets, distracted by the sweetness. "He needs to be dry," Sarah whispers. She gestures for Clara to unwrap the bundle of rags around the infant. What follows is a lesson in swamp hygiene, a mechanic of survival rarely spoken of but absolutely vital. There is no cotton here, no fresh linen. Instead, Sarah heads to a patch of vibrant green moss growing near the waterline, sphagnum moss. She pulls up a large clump. It is heavy with water, dripping like a sponge. She wrings it out with strong, practiced hands until it is just damp, then fluffs it up. "Nature's cloth," she says, handing it to Clara. You watch as they use the moss to line the baby's swaddling clothes. It is soft, cleaner than any rag you have, and, though you don't know the science of it, naturally antiseptic. It absorbs moisture and fights the diaper rash that could turn deadly in this humidity. The smell of the moss is sharp, like iodine and wet earth, masking the sour scent of the unwashed infant. Clara looks at the moss with skepticism, then relief as the baby settles, comfortable for the first time in days. You realize that this moss, this overlooked weed, is saving that child's life. But a dry baby needs milk, and a nursing mother needs food. Clara is gaunt, her collarbones protruding sharply. She has nothing left to give. Cyrus looks at the group's meagre supplies. A few strips of dried turtle meat, a handful of muscadines, the last of the ash cake. He divides it. He takes a significant portion, more than half, and hands it to Clara. The group watches. Your stomach twists with hunger. That meat was supposed to last 2 days, but no one speaks, no one objects. It is the unspoken law of the Maroon communities. The future eats first. If the baby dies, a part of your hope dies. If the mother starves, the baby dies. You watch Clara eat. She tries to go slowly, but her hands shake. She devours the meat, the berries, the bread. You lick your dry lips, tasting the salt of your own sweat, and look away to give her dignity. The meal finishes. The sun is up now, turning the mist into a blinding white haze. The heat returns, instant and suffocating. "We have to move," Cyrus says, "but we're slow now." He looks at you. You carry the pack. He hands you a bundle, extra skins, the tools, the remaining salt. It is heavy, probably 50 pounds. You swing it onto your back, the straps digging into your shoulders. You're now the pack mule. This frees up Sarah to help Clara and Cyrus to scout ahead. You set off. The pace is agonizing. Clara stumbles often, her legs weak. Every time she slips, the baby makes a noise, and the whole group freezes, hearts hammering. You find yourself scanning the trees constantly, not for bears this time, but for the flash of a tracker's coat or the glint of a rifle barrel. You reach a section of quagmire, ground that looks solid but trembles like gelatin. It is a floating mat of vegetation over deep water. You have to step lightly, keeping your weight moving forward. If you stop, you sink. Clara hesitates. She looks at the quaking earth with terror. "Walk where I walk," you whisper. You step onto the mat. It bows under your weight. Water, seeping around your boots. You take another step. You leave a trail of dark, wet footprints. Clara follows, placing her bare feet exactly in your boot prints. It is a slow, rhythmic dance of trust. Step, sink, recover, step. The smell here is ancient. Peat and methane bubbling up from the disturbed mat. It makes your head swim. The humidity is so high you feel like you are breathing water. Halfway across, the baby lets out a wail. It isn't a whimper this time. It is a full-lunged scream of distress. The sound echoes off the trees loud enough to wake the dead. Cyrus spins around, his eyes wide. He gestures frantically for silence. Sarah tries the honey rag again, but the baby spits it out. He is hot, uncomfortable, terrified. You're exposed, you're loud, you're vulnerable. And then, from the tree line ahead, a bird calls out, a crow. Caw, caw, caw. But it's wrong. The rhythm is too regular. It isn't a bird. Cyrus freezes. He raises his hand, signalling a full stop. He answers with a low, throbbing owl hoot. Silence stretches out, thick and heavy. You grip your knife, the sweat making the handle slick. Then the bushes part. A figure steps out. It is a man, tall and broad, wearing a vest made of cured deer hide. His hair is matted into thick locks decorated with river shells. He holds a longbow, an arrow nocked but pointing at the ground. He isn't a tracker. He isn't a slave catcher. He looks at Cyrus, then at the baby, then at you. He smiles, revealing teeth filed to points. "You brought noise to my garden," he says. His voice is deep, rolling like thunder. He is a Maroon from a deep interior settlement, one of the legendary Great Dismal communities that have existed for generations. You have found them, or rather, they have found you. The man with the filed teeth doesn't lower his bow immediately. He stands like a statue carved from cypress wood, blending so perfectly with the shadows that if you blink he seems to disappear. He is studying Clara, the baby, and the desperate exhaustion etched into every line of your face. "Noise brings dogs," he says finally, relaxing the tension on the bowstring. "Follow." He turns and vanishes into the undergrowth. There is no path that you can see, just a wall of briars and poison ivy. But Cyrus doesn't hesitate. He motions for the group to follow. You enter a maze. The man leads you through a series of twists and turns that seem designed to disorient. You wade through knee-deep water, crawl under massive fallen logs, and skirt the edges of bubbling sinkholes. The smell here is different, sharper, like pine resin and wood smoke. After an hour, the vegetation opens up. You step into a clearing that takes your breath away. It is a village, a real village, built entirely on stilts. Dozens of huts made from cypress planks and palmetto thatch rise out of the dark water, connected by a network of suspended walkways. Smoke curls lazily from central fire pits built on clay platforms. There are people everywhere. Children running along the walkways with effortless balance. Women grinding corn in hollowed-out logs. Men sharpening spears and tending to fishing nets. They stop and watch as you enter. Their expressions wary but curious. This is a permanent settlement. These people aren't running. They are living. The man leads you to the centre of the village, to a larger structure with a roof made of overlapping bark shingles. He gestures for you to sit on a woven mat. The wood beneath you is dry, smooth, and solid. It feels like the greatest luxury you have ever known. An older woman approaches. She wears a dress made of patchwork cloth, faded calico, rough linen, pieces of old sacks, stitched together with bright yellow thread. Her hair is wrapped in a vibrant red scarf that looks startlingly clean against the muted tones of the swamp. She looks at Clara and the baby. She doesn't ask questions. She simply hands Clara a bowl. "Goat milk," she says, "and corn mush." You stare. Goat milk? Here? Then you hear it. The bleating of a goat. You look toward the edge of the village and see them. Small, sturdy goats penned on a raised platform, munching on a pile of gathered vines. They have adapted just like the people. The woman turns to you. You look like you've been fighting the mud. She hands you a small clay pot. Inside is a salve, green and pungent. For the bites and the rot. You apply it to your legs. It stings, then cools instantly, numbing the itch of the ant bites and the ache of the trench foot. It smells of mint and camphor. "We are the people of the cypress," the man with the bow says, sitting down opposite Cyrus. "We have been here since the first ships came." He tells you their history in short, rhythmic sentences, how their ancestors fled the coast 100 years ago, how they learned to build on the water, how they trade with the outside world through a secret network of waterways that only they know. "We saw your smoke," he says. "We heard the dredge. The iron snake is coming." The dredge. The machine eating the swamp. Even here, deep in the interior, they know about it. "We fight it," Cyrus says, his voice low, "as we stop it." The man laughs, a harsh barking sound. "You cannot fight iron with wood. You fight iron with water." He explains their plan. They aren't going to attack the dredge directly. That would bring the militia. Instead, they are going to use the swamp itself. They plan to breach the levees the plantation owners have built to control the water levels. If they break the dams, the water will rush back in, flooding the canals, swamping the machines, and reclaiming the land. It is a bold, dangerous plan. It requires navigating the canals at night, right under the noses of the overseers. It requires strength, stealth, and perfect timing. "We need hands," the man says, looking at you. "Strong hands." You look at your own hands. They are calloused, stained with mud, scarred. They are strong. You look at Clara feeding the baby in the corner. You look at the children playing on the walkways, safe and free. You realize that your journey hasn't been about escaping. It has been about arriving here, at this moment. You aren't just a runaway anymore. You're a soldier in a war for the only home you have left. "I'm in," you say. The man nods. He reaches into a pouch and pulls out a piece of charred wood. He draws a map on the floor of the hut. It shows the canal, the dredge, and the levee. "Tonight," he says. "The moon is dark, the water is high. Tonight we break the wall." You spend the rest of the day preparing. You sharpen your knife until it can shave the hair off your arm. You help coat the bottom of the dugout canoes with a mixture of pitch and grease to make them silent in the water. You eat a hearty meal of stewed rabbit and dumplings, feeling your strength return. As dusk falls, the village grows quiet. The men and women chosen for the mission gather by the water. They paint their faces with mud and ash, disappearing into the night. You step into a canoe. It rocks gently under your weight. You pick up a paddle. The water is black, reflecting nothing. You push off, gliding away from the safety of the village, back into the maze, back toward the danger. But this time, you aren't running away. You are moving toward the fight, and the swamp, with its silence and its shadows, is moving with you. You glide through the water, the canoe cutting silently through the black surface. The air is thick with humidity, pressing against your skin like a damp towel, but your mind is sharp. You are part of a fleet of shadows, 5 canoes, each carrying 2 Maroons, moving in a single file line. The man with the filed teeth, whose name you learn is Kofi, is in the stern of your canoe. He paddles with a rhythm that is almost hypnotic, the blade entering and exiting the water without a splash. You mimic him, your muscles burning with the effort of keeping the motion smooth. You are leaving the deep interior, heading back toward the edge where the swamp meets the plantation lands. The transition is subtle but terrifying. The trees thin out. The water becomes straighter, channeled into the man-made canals. The smell changes from the rich rot of the swamp to the dry dust of cultivated fields and the acrid smoke of coal fires. Ahead you see the glow. Lanterns. They are strung along the levee, illuminating the massive wooden beast that is the dredge. It sits in the water like a fortress, its metal arm raised against the sky. You can hear the hiss of steam, even though the machine is idle for the night. It sounds like a sleeping dragon. Kofi signals. The canoes drift toward the bank, sliding into the cover of the reeds. You wait. A guard walks along the levee, his rifle slung over his shoulder. He pauses to light a pipe, the match flaring briefly in the darkness. He looks bored, complacent. He has no idea that the swamp is watching. Him. The plan is simple. The levee holds back the water of Lake Drummond, the massive natural lake at the centre of the swamp. If you breach the levee at the right point, the pressure of the lake water will do the rest. It will tear through the gap, flooding the canal and swamping the dredge. You slip out of the canoe, lowering yourself into the water. It is deeper here and colder. You have a heavy iron pry bar in your hand, traded for weeks ago. You move toward the base of the levee, keeping low. The mud is slick, treacherous. You reach the wooden pilings that reinforce the earthen dam. You can feel the vibration of the water pushing against them. The lake wants to be free. You jam the pry bar into a gap between the timbers. Next to you, Cyrus does the same. You heave. The wood groans, a deep, wet sound. Above you, the guard stops. What was that? You freeze, pressing yourself into the mud. The beam of his lantern sweeps over the water, dancing just inches from your head. You hold your breath until your lungs burn. A frog croaks nearby, loud and sudden. Just a bullfrog, the guard mutters, moving on. You exhale slowly. You grip the bar again. Kofi is at the other end of the piling. He nods. 1, 2, 3. You pull with everything you have. Your boots slip in the mud, but you dig in. The timber cracks. A jet of water shoots out, hitting you in the chest with the force of a punch. It is cold. Powerful. Again, Cyrus hisses. You heave again. The crack widens. The water pressure takes over, tearing at the weakened wood. The piling snaps with a sound like a gunshot. Run! You scramble back toward the canoes. Behind you, the levee is disintegrating. The small jet has become a torrent. The earth is washing away in chunks. The guard is shouting now. A bell starts ringing on the dredge. You dive into the canoe, grabbing your paddle. Go! Go! You paddle furiously, fighting the current that is now rushing toward the breach. The water level in the canal is rising rapidly. You look back. The dredge is tilting. The water is undermining its foundation. With a groan of metal and wood, the massive machine lists to the side, sliding into the widening gap in the levee. Steam vents scream as the boiler is submerged. The lanterns on the levee are extinguished by the spray. The world goes dark and chaotic. You paddle until your arms are numb, putting distance between you and the destruction. You don't stop until you are back in the deep cypress forest, where the water absorbs the noise and the trees block the view. You drift in the silence, listening to the distant shouts and the churning water. You have done it. The iron snake is dead. The water has reclaimed its own. Kofi passes you a gourd of water. You drink, your hands shaking. You look at him. He's grinning, his filed teeth white in the moonlight. The swamp remembers, he says. You return to the village at dawn. The people are waiting. They don't cheer. That would be dangerous. But they touch your shoulder, offer you food, look at you with new respect. You aren't just a refugee anymore. You're a protector. You sleep that day on the solid wood of the platform, the deepest sleep you have had in years. You dream of water, powerful and free, washing away the chains of the world. When you wake, the air feels different. Lighter. The oppressive thump of the dredge is gone. The silence of the swamp is pure again. But survival never rests. That evening, Sarah comes to you. She holds a piece of cloth in her hand. It is dyed a deep, vibrant blue. Indigo. We need to trade again, she says. The winter is coming, and now that we have stopped the machine, they will send men. We need powder. You look at the blue cloth. It is beautiful, the colour of the deep ocean. It is made from the indigo plants that grow wild in the abandoned fields near the edge of the swamp. It is valuable. You nod. You pick up your knife. You pick up your paddle. The fight is over for now, but the war for survival continues. You step back into the canoe. The swamp is waiting. You're moving through a stand of Atlantic white cedar, the trees growing so thick they blot out the sky. The air here smells of resin and old needles, a sharp, clean scent that clears your head. But your mind is cluttered with worry. Sarah was right. The destruction of the dredge brought a brief victory, but it also brought attention. The patrols on the perimeter have doubled. You can hear them sometimes, distant gunshots echoing through the trees, dogs baying at shadows. They aren't just looking for runaways anymore, they are looking for an army. But you aren't an army. You're a community of families, trying to exist in the margins. Today, your task is gathering indigo. The plant grows in the sandy, slightly drier patches near the old canal banks, remnants of failed agricultural attempts from decades ago. It is a dangerous harvest. To get to the indigo, you have to leave the deep water and step onto land that is firm enough for horses. You're with a small group, Sarah, Kofi, and a young boy named Marcus who has eyes like a hawk. Marcus climbs a tall pine tree serving as your lookout. You and the others work quickly, cutting the indigo stalks with your knives. The plants are waist-high, with small green leaves that hold the secret of the dye. You bundle them tightly, tying them with vines. The sap stains your hands a dark greenish blue that won't wash off for weeks. It is the mark of your labour, a temporary tattoo of your worth. Keep low, Sarah hisses. Sound travels on the wind today. You freeze. You hear it too. A rhythmic thudding. Not a machine this time. Hooves. A patrol is riding along the old logging road parallel to your position. You drop flat, pressing your face into the pine needles. The ground vibrates against your cheek. You can smell the horses, sweat and leather, and the tobacco smoke of the riders. "See anything, boy?" a voice calls out. It is close, maybe 50 yards away. "Nothing but snakes and briars, Captain," another voice replies. "This swamp is empty." "It ain't empty," the captain says. "It's full of ghosts. Keep your eyes open." They ride past. You wait until the sound of the hooves fades completely before you dare to move. Your heart is pounding against your ribs like a trapped bird. "Close," Kofi whispers. "Too close." You finish the harvest in silence, moving with frantic speed. You load the bundles into the canoes hidden in the reeds. You have enough indigo to trade for a keg of powder and maybe a new axe head. It is a fortune. But getting it to the trade point is the problem. The usual route, the main canal, is swarming with patrols. You have to find another way. Cyrus knows a way. He calls it the Ghost Cut. It is an old, natural channel that runs through a section of the swamp that burned 50 years ago. The trees there are dead skeletons, silver and black, standing in water that is choked with ash and charcoal. You paddle into the Ghost Cut as the sun sets. The landscape is eerie. The dead trees have no leaves to block the moonlight, so the water glows with a pale reflected light. It is beautiful and terrifying. The water here is shallow, barely deep enough for the canoes. You have to pole your way through, pushing against the bottom with long cypress staffs. The sound of the wood hitting the mud is a dull thump, suck, thump, suck. Suddenly your pole hits something hard. Not wood, not stone. Something hollow. You reach down into the water. Your fingers brush against smooth bone. A skull. You recoil. You look down. The water is clear enough here to see the bottom. It is littered with bones. Human bones. "The yellow fever of 22, Cyrus says softly from the canoe ahead. "A quarantine camp. They sent them here to die." You are paddling through a graveyard. The realization makes your skin crawl. This place has been a refuge for the unwanted for generations. First the sick, now the enslaved. The swamp holds everyone the world throws away. You keep moving, trying not to look at the bottom. You focus on the rhythm of the pole. Thump, push, thump, push. You emerge from the Ghost Cut hours later, exhausted and shaken. You're near the edge of the swamp, close to the town of Suffolk. This is where the free black traders operate, men and women who walk between the two worlds. You hide the canoes and carry the indigo bundles on your backs. You move through the woods like shadows, avoiding the roads. You reach a small, dilapidated barn on the outskirts of town. You knock, 3 sharp raps, then 2 slow ones. The door opens. A man stands there holding a lantern. He wears a clean shirt and trousers, but his eyes have the same wary look as yours. "You're late," he says. "The road was crowded," Cyrus replies. You hand over the indigo. The man inspects it, nodding. He hands over a heavy wooden keg and a cloth sack, gunpowder, lead shot, and a small bag of coffee beans. A rare luxury. "There's talk," the trader says, lowering his voice. "Talk of a raid, A big one. They're bringing in dogs from the Carolinas. Bear dogs. Vicious things. When? Kofi asks. Soon, before the first frost. They want to clear the swamp before winter. You take the supplies. The news settles in your stomach like a cold stone. Winter is hard enough. Winter with a militia hunting you is a nightmare. You return to the canoes. The journey back through the ghost cut feels different now. The bones beneath you aren't just remnants of the past. They're a warning of the future. You reach the village at dawn. You're tired, but there is no time to sleep. You have to prepare. You have to fortify. You have to turn your home into a fortress. You spend the day sharpening stakes. You cut hundreds of saplings, whittling the ends into needle-sharp points. You drive them into the mud around the village just below the waterline, invisible caltrops. If a boat hits them, it will hole. If a man steps on them, he will be crippled. You build more platforms, higher in the trees, sniper nests. You stock them with arrows and rocks. You practice moving silently through the canopy, swinging from branch to branch like the squirrels. You are transforming. You aren't just surviving the swamp anymore, you are becoming the swamp's teeth. That night, you sit by the fire, cleaning your rifle with a piece of oiled rag. It is an old musket, rusted and unreliable, but it is all you have. You look at Clara, rocking her baby. You look at Marcus, sharpening a spear. You realize that you're fighting for more than just your own life. You're fighting for the idea that you can exist, that you can be free in a world that wants to own you. You load the musket, you pour the powder, ram the ball, you set it beside you. The wind picks up, rustling the leaves. It sounds like whispering voices. The swamp is talking to you. It is telling you to be ready. You close your eyes, but you don't sleep. You listen. You wait. You're sitting in one of the new sniper nests 30 feet above the water. The platform is small, barely large enough for 2 people, woven tightly into the crook of a massive cypress. The bark at your back is rough and solid, grounding you as the tree sways gently in the breeze. From here the swamp looks different. It is a sea of green and grey, stretching endlessly. You can see the patterns of the water channels, the clusters of hummocks, the thin wisps of mist rising from the interior. It is beautiful, vast and impenetrable. Marcus sits beside you. He's young, maybe 14, but his hands are steady as he refletches an arrow. He uses wild turkey feathers, tying them with thin strips of deer sinew. "Do you think they'll come today?" he asks quietly. "Maybe," you say. "Maybe tomorrow, but they will come." You scan the horizon. You're looking for birds. If a flock of crows takes flight suddenly, it means something disturbed. Them. If the herons are silent, it means something is moving near the water. Hours pass. The sun climbs, heating the air until it shimmers. The mosquitoes find you even up here, buzzing around your ears. You ignore them. Your focus is absolute. Then you see it. A flash of white in the distance. A heron taking flight, croaking in alarm. Then another. A ripple of disturbance moving through the canopy. "Signal," you whisper. Marcus picks up a small, hollowed-out gourd. He blows into it. The sound is low, mournful, like the call of a mourning dove. Hoo, hoo, hoo. Below you the village goes silent. The women douse the fires instantly, covering the embers with wet moss to kill the smoke. The children are ushered into the thickest part of the brush, hidden in hollow logs and under root masses. The men take their positions behind the sharpened stakes. The swamp holds its breath. You watch the water. A line of boats appears around the bend, flat-bottomed skiffs poled by men in militia uniforms. There are dogs in the bows, straining against their leashes, baying. Bear dogs, you think, remembering the trader's warning. These aren't tracking hounds. These are attack dogs. Big, muscular, bred to fight. The lead boat hits one of the submerged stakes. There is a crunch of wood, a shout of surprise. The boat lurches, taking on water. "Ambush!" a man screams. "To the trees!" The militiamen jump into the water. It is chest-deep here. They struggle against the mud, their heavy boots sinking. The dogs splash in after them, barking furiously. "Now," Cyrus's voice echoes from below. You raise your musket. You don't aim at the men. You aim at the water in front of them. You fire. The splash of the ball sends a spray of water into the air. It is a warning. Go back. But they don't go back. They return fire. Bullets thwack into the trees around you, shredding leaves and bark. You duck behind the thick trunk of the cypress. Marcus leans out and looses an arrow. It strikes a militiaman in the shoulder. He yells, dropping his rifle into the water. The dogs are the problem. They are swimming toward the village platforms, their teeth bared. If they get onto the walkways, they will tear through the camp. Kofi drops from a lower branch, landing on a log in the water. He holds a long spear. He meets the lead dog, a massive brute with black fur. The dog lunges. Kofi sidesteps, thrusting the spear. The dog yelps and retreats. It is chaos. The air is filled with smoke, shouts, barking, and the splash of water. But you have the advantage. You know where the deep holes are, you know where the stakes are hidden. You reload your musket, your hands moving with practiced speed. Paw, patch, ball, ram, prime. You see the captain of the militia. He is wading toward the centre of the village, shouting orders. He's trying to rally his men. You aim carefully, you fire. The ball hits the water right next to him, splashing mud into his face. He stumbles back, falling into a deep hole. He goes under. When he surfaces, he is sputtering, panic in his eyes. He has lost his footing, he has lost his command. "Retreat," he chokes out. "Fall back." The militiamen scramble back to their boats. The ones that are still floating are turned around. They pole away frantically, leaving the damaged skiff behind. The dogs swim after them, whining. You watch them go. You don't cheer. You just breathe. Your hands are shaking now, the adrenaline fading. Below, the village emerges from hiding. Clara climbs out from under a root mass, the baby clutched to her chest. He is silent. He has learned. Sarah checks the wounded. A few scrapes, a twisted ankle, but everyone is alive. They will be back, Cyrus says, wading out to retrieve the abandoned boat. With more men. With fire. He is right. This was a skirmish. The war is just beginning. But you have won something today. You have proven that the swamp is not just a hiding place. It is a weapon, and you know how to wield it. You climb down from the tree. Your legs are stiff. You walk to the edge of the water and look at the floating debris. A hat, a powder horn, a torn piece of uniform. You pick up the powder horn. It is dry inside. Good. You will need it. That night, the mood in the camp is somber. There is no celebration feast. Instead, there is work. You repair the stakes. You sharpen more arrows. You reinforce the platforms. You sit by the fire, watching the embers glow. You think about the captain's face when he fell into the hole. The fear. For the first time, they are afraid of you. Not just as runaways, but as a force. You look at your hands. They are stained blue from the indigo, black from the powder, brown from the mud. They are the hands of a Maroon. And for the first time you realize that you aren't just surviving the swamp. You are the swamp. The swamp is changing. The victory against the militia has bought you time, but it has also altered the atmosphere. The air feels heavier, charged with a static tension that makes the hair on your arm stand up. The birds are quieter, the water seems darker. You're reinforcing the eastern perimeter, weaving thorns into a barrier wall. The thorns are from the devil's walking stick plant. Vicious, inch-long spikes that tear through clothing and skin alike. You handle them with thick leather pads, but you still get pricked. Cyrus approaches, his face unreadable. He holds a small, tightly rolled piece of birch bark. "Message," he says, "from the coast." Messages travel through the swamp via a network of post offices, hollow trees, marked stumps, specific rock crevices. It is a slow, silent telegraph system. You unroll the bark. Symbols are scratched into the soft inner layer. A wavy line for water, a circle with a cross, a bird flying south. A ship, Cyrus translates. A big one, anchored near the Dismal Swamp Canal. They aren't sending militia anymore. They are sending the Navy. The Navy. That means cannons. That means organised, disciplined force. They aren't going to wade in. They are going to shell the interior. They are going to burn the swamp down around you. "We can't fight a ship," Marcus says, his voice cracking. "No," Cyrus agrees, "but we can make them regret entering the water." The plan shifts from defence to sabotage. You cannot hold the village against cannon fire. You have to strike before they can fire. You spend the next 2 days preparing fire rafts. You lash together dry logs, piling them high with pitch-soaked moss, fatwood, and dried reeds. You add bags of sulphur, traded weeks ago, to create choking, blinding smoke. The rafts are heavy, unstable. You have to tow them through the narrow channels, wading chest-deep in the water to guide them. It is gruelling work. The water is getting colder as autumn approaches. The chill seeps into your joints, making your fingers clumsy. You move at night, using the moonless sky as cover. The journey to the canal takes 2 nights. You sleep during the day, hiding under camouflaged tarps, listening to the distant sounds of the outside world. A whistle from a steam engine, the tolling of a church bell. It sounds like another planet. On the 3rd night, you reach the canal. The ship is there, a sloop of war, its masts rising high above the trees. It looks out of place, a wooden monster trapped in a ditch. Lanterns hang from the rigging, casting long reflections on the water. You and Kofi take the first raft. You light the fuse, a slow-burning rope of twisted cotton. You push the raft out into the current. The current is sluggish here. You have to swim behind the raft, pushing it, keeping your head low behind the logs. The water is cold, oily with the ship's bilge discharge. You get close, 50 yards, 30. You can hear the sailors talking on deck, their voices bored. "This place smells like a grave," one says. "It will be," you think. You give the raft a final hard shove toward the ship's hull. Then you dive, swimming underwater, back toward the reeds. You hold your breath until your lungs burn. You surface just as the raft hits the ship. The impact is soft, barely a thud. But then the fire catches. The pitch ignites with a whoosh, sending flames shooting 10 feet into the air. The sulphur burns yellow and acrid, creating a cloud of choking gas. Fire! Fire on the port side. The alarm bell clangs. Sailors scramble, shouting. But the fire is hot, fed by the fat wood. It licks at the tarred hull of the ship. The smoke envelops the deck, blinding the crew. Then the 2nd raft hits, and the 3rd. The canal becomes a tunnel of fire. The ship is trapped. It can't turn around. The canal is too narrow. It can't back out quickly. You watch from the reeds. The captain is shouting orders, but his voice is drowned out by the roar of the flames. The ship isn't sinking, but it is burning. The rigging catches. The sails, furled but dry, go up like paper. It is a pyre, a message written in fire and smoke. You're not welcome here. You retreat into the swamp, leaving the chaos behind. You don't celebrate, you don't look back, you just move. When you return to the village, you are exhausted, covered in soot and oil. But you are alive. The next morning, the smoke from the burning ship is visible for miles, a black pillar rising above the trees. "They will leave now," Sarah says, watching the sky. "For a while." But winter is coming. The air has a bite to it now, a sharpness that warns of frost. The water temperature is dropping. The snakes are growing sluggish, preparing to hibernate. You have to prepare too. The summer camp, with its open platforms and airy roofs, won't hold heat. You need walls. You need insulation. You start gathering moss. Huge mounds of it. You dry it in the sun, turning it daily. You mix clay with deer hair to make chinking for the log walls. You're building winter quarters. You construct a smoke hut, a small enclosed structure where you can cure meat and fish for the long months ahead. Smoke preserves. Smoke is life. You sit by the fire, warming your hands. The adrenaline of the raid has faded, replaced by the deep, aching fatigue of survival. You look at the others. They are thinner, harder. The swamp has chiseled away everything soft, leaving only the essential. You are Maroons. You are the people of the water, and you are ready for the cold. The first frost hits the swamp not as a blanket of white, but as a glittering sheath of ice coating every cypress knee and reed. The water doesn't freeze solid. It is too dark, too moving, but a thin crust forms in the shallows, cracking loudly when you step through it. The sound is like breaking glass in a library, sharp and startling. You wake up shivering. The platform, which was a relief in the summer heat, is now a conductor for the cold. The wind whistles through the gaps in the floorboards, biting at your back. You pull your deer-hide blanket tighter, tucking your nose inside the fur to conserve warmth. Sarah is already awake. She's mixing clay and moss in a turtle shell bowl. "Chinking," she says, her breath misting in the air. "The wind finds the holes. We must close them." You spend the day winterizing the huts. You pack the clay mixture into the spaces between the logs, smoothing it with your fingers. It is cold, wet work. Your hands turn red, then numb. You have to stop every few minutes to warm them over the fire. The fire is different now. In summer, you kept it small to avoid heat. Now you build it up, feeding it with the dense, resin-rich heartwood of pine trees. Fatwood, they call it. It burns hot and bright, cutting through the damp chill. But fire brings smoke, and in the enclosed winter hut the smoke has nowhere to go. It hangs in a thick layer near the roof, stinging your eyes and making you cough. You learn to move low, crawling on your hands and knees to stay beneath the haze. Smoke is better than freezing, Kofi mutters, rubbing his watering eyes. The food supply changes too. The fresh greens are gone, withered by the frost. The fish are deeper, harder to catch. You rely on the stores you built up, the smoked turtle, the dried berries, the buried roots. You learn to make acorn bread. You gather acorns from the oaks on the ridges, shelling them by the thousands. You leach the tannins out by soaking the nut meat in running water for days. Then you grind it into flour, mixing it with water and fat to make dense, heavy cakes. They taste bitter and earthy, but they are full of fat and energy. Winter in the swamp is a time of stillness. The insects are gone, silenced by the cold. The birds have migrated. The only sounds are the wind in the bare branches and the occasional crack of a freezing tree. It is a time for stories. In the long, dark evenings, huddled around the fire, the elders speak. They tell of the first Maroons, who came here when the swamp was wilder, deeper. They tell of the spirits that inhabit the water, the platai, who leads travellers astray with false lights, the cypresses that walk at night. The swamp has a memory, Sarah says, her voice low. It keeps what it takes. You listen, watching the shadows dance on the walls. You feel the weight of that memory, the bones in the ghost cut, the burning ship, the faces of those you left behind. One night, a storm blows in from the north, a nor'easter. It brings sleet, a mixture of rain and ice that coats everything in a heavy frozen glaze. The trees groan under the weight. Branches snap with sounds like cannon fire. The roof of your hut begins to sag. The weight of the ice is too much for the palmetto thatch. "Props!" Cyrus shouts. You scramble to cut saplings, jamming them under the roof beams to support the weight. You work in the dark, the sleet stinging your face like needles. The wind howls, tearing at the walls. You spend the night holding the roof up, your shoulders aching, your breath coming in gasps. You are fighting gravity and ice. By morning the storm passes. The swamp is a crystal palace, dazzlingly bright in the sun. But it is deadly. The ice makes movement impossible. You cannot walk on the logs. They are slick as oil. You cannot paddle. The water is choked with slush. You're trapped in the village. Food runs low. You ration the acorn bread, eating tiny pieces twice a day. You melt ice for water. You huddle together for warmth, sharing body heat in a tangled pile of furs and limbs. "This is the starving time," Sarah whispers. "The test." You look at the baby, Clara's son. He's thin, quiet. He doesn't cry much anymore. He doesn't have the energy. You give Clara your portion of bread. She tries to refuse, but you press it into her hand. "Eat," you say, "for him." You survive by sleeping. You enter a state of semi-hibernation, moving as little as possible to conserve calories. You dream of heat, of sun, of roasted pork, and then, finally, the thaw comes. It starts with a drip, a single drop of water falling from the roof, then another. The sound becomes a rhythm, then a chorus. The ice cracks, sliding off the trees in great sheets. The water level rises, flushing out the slush. You emerge from the hut, blinking in the sunlight. The air is warmer. You take a deep breath. It smells of mud and life. You have made it through the winter. You're thinner, weaker, but you're still standing. Cyrus stands at the edge of the platform looking out at the water. "Spring brings the eels," he says. You smile. Eels mean fat. Eels mean food. You pick up your spear. Your hands are scarred, your skin weathered. You're not the same person who stumbled into the swamp months ago. You are a Maroon. You are part of the land now. And as you wade into the water, feeling the cool mud between your toes, you know that no matter what comes, trackers, storms, hunger, you can face it. Because you have survived the ice, and the swamp in its own brutal way has accepted you. You are waist deep in the black water, your hands feeling along the muddy bottom. The spring thaw has brought the eels just as Cyrus promised. They move in sleek, muscular ribbons through the submerged roots, migrating from the deep ocean back into the freshwater veins of the swamp. Catching an eel with your bare hands is an art form. You have to be faster than thought. You feel the slick skin brush against your fingers, a ghost of a touch. You don't grab, you pin. You press the eel into the mud, trapping it, then slide your hand up to grip it behind the head where it can't bite. It thrashes violently, wrapping its body around your forearm, squeezing with surprising strength. The slime coating its skin makes it like holding onto a greased rope. You heave it out of the water and toss it onto the bank where Marcus is waiting with a club. A dull thud, and the thrashing stops. You work for hours. The water is cold, numbing your legs, but the sun on your back is warm. The air smells of wet earth and blooming jasmine, a sweet, heady scent that masks the usual decay. By midday, you have a pile of eels. They are ugly creatures, snake-like and slimy, but to you, they look like gold bars. They are pure protein and fat. You spend the afternoon smoking them. You build a frame of green willow branches over a low, smoky fire. You gut the eels, splitting them open and laying them on the rack. The smoke turns the meat a rich mahogany brown. The smell is intoxicating, salty, fishy and smoky. While the eels smoke, you work on a new project. Cyrus has decided the village needs a better warning system. The bird calls are effective, but they rely on line of sight. You need something that can carry sound through the dense forest without alerting the outside world. Drum logs, he says. You find a massive hollow cypress log, felled years ago by a storm. It is seasoned, hard as rock. You drag it to the centre of the village. Using fire and chisels, you hollow it out further, carving a long slit along the top. When struck with a heavy wooden mallet, the log produces a deep, resonant boom. It isn't a sharp sound like a gunshot. It is a low-frequency vibration that you feel in your chest more than you hear with your ears. It travels through the ground, through the water, carrying for miles. You develop a code, 1 beat, all clear, 2 beats, game spotted, 3 rapid beats, danger. You test it. You strike the log. The sound rolls out, a wave of pressure moving through the air. Birds take flight miles away. It is a voice for the swamp. But sound works both ways. The drum announces your presence. It says, "We are here." It is a calculated risk. You are betting that the fear of the swamp is stronger than the curiosity of the outsiders. Life settles into a rhythm. The seasons turn. The mosquitoes return, a humming cloud of misery. The heat builds. You plant the garden again, expanding it to include pumpkins and beans. You trade with the coast, exchanging smoked eel for cloth and seeds. You notice changes in the group. Clara's son is walking now, toddling along the walkways with a balance that seems unnatural for a toddler. He doesn't cry when he falls, he just gets up, wiping mud from his face. He is a child of the swamp, born into freedom. Sarah is getting older. Her hands are slower, her cough deeper. The dampness is claiming her lungs. You take over more of her tasks, the weaving, the medicine-making. She teaches you the secrets of the plants, which roots stop bleeding, which berries cause visions, which mushrooms kill in an hour. The swamp gives, she wheezes, pointing to a patch of white flowers, and the swamp takes. One day, a stranger arrives. He doesn't come by canoe. He walks in, stumbling out of the undergrowth, half dead. He's wearing a uniform, not militia, not navy, Union blue. It is 1863. The Civil War has been raging for 2 years, but in the isolation of the swamp it has been nothing but distant rumours. Now it has arrived at your doorstep. The soldier is delirious with fever. He has been bitten by a snake. His leg is swollen and purple. He babbles about battles, about freedom, about a proclamation from a man named Lincoln. You treat him. You use the snake root Sarah showed you, packing it onto the bite. You force willow tea down his throat. You watch over him for 3 days. When he wakes, he is weak but lucid. He tells you about the war. He tells you that the Union Army is in Suffolk. He tells you that they are recruiting. "Coloured troops," he says, his voice raspy. "Men like you, fighting for freedom." The village buzzes with the news. Freedom. Not just the hidden, muddy freedom of the swamp, but real, legal freedom. The chance to walk in the sun without fear. Cyrus calls a council. The fire burns high that night. "We are safe here," an elder argues. "Why trade safety for war?" "Because this isn't safety," Kofi counters. "It's hiding. I want to fight." The community splits. Some, like Sarah, are too old or too weary to leave. They will stay, guarding the sanctuary. But the young men, Kofi, Marcus, you feel the pull. You look at your hands. They are scarred, strong. You know how to move silently. You know how to kill. You're a warrior, forged in the toughest environment on earth. "I'm going," you say. The decision is heavy. Leaving the swamp means leaving the only home that has ever truly been yours. It means leaving the people who saved you. You pack your meagre belongings, your knife, your powder horn, a bag of dried eel. You stand before Sarah. She touches your face, her fingers rough like bark. Don't forget the water, she whispers. Don't forget the mud. It made you. You step into the canoe. Cyrus is staying. He is the leader now. He nods to you, a solemn farewell. You paddle away, heading toward the edge of the swamp, toward the sound of cannons, toward a war that will decide the fate of a nation. Behind you, the drumlog beats once. All clear. You are leaving the Great Dismal Swamp. But you know, deep in your bones, that you will never really leave. The mud is in your blood now, and you're bringing the swamp to the war. You emerge from the swamp not as a fugitive, but as a ghost materializing into the world of men. The transition is jarring. The light is too bright, unfiltered by the cypress canopy. The ground is too hard, jarring your knees with every step. The air smells of dust, horse manure, and the acrid tang of gunpowder. So different from the rich, wet rot of your home. You and the small group of Maroon volunteers, Kofi, Marcus, and 3 others, stand at the edge of the Union encampment near Suffolk. You're a sight to behold. Your clothes are skins and homespun cloth dyed with swamp mud. Your skin is painted with clay to ward off insects. You carry weapons that look primitive but are deadly effective, longbows, spears, and your rusted but well-maintained musket. A picket guard spots you. He raises his rifle, his eyes widening. "Halt! Who goes there?" "Recruits," Kofi says. His voice is calm, carrying the deep resonance of the drumlog. You are ushered into the camp. It is a city of canvas tents, arranged in rigid straight lines that offend your sense of natural order. There are thousands of men here. Blue uniforms, shiny brass buttons, rifles with bayonets that gleam in the sun. You are brought before a white officer with a tired face and a moustache that droops over his lip. He looks at you with skepticism, then with something dawning in his eyes. Respect. Or perhaps just a recognition of utility. "You're from the swamp," he states. It isn't a question. "Yes," you answer. "We've heard stories," he says. "They say you can walk on water. They say you can see in the dark." "We survive," you say. "You're enlisted. But you aren't put in the regular lines. You don't drill in the open fields, marching shoulder to shoulder. You don't fit in the formation. Instead, you become scouts. Guides, they call you. They give you a uniform, a heavy wool coat that feels suffocatingly hot, and trousers that chafe your legs. You wear them because you have to, but you keep your moccasins. The army boots are too loud, too clumsy. You keep your knife. Your first mission is simple. Lead a detachment of Union soldiers through the edge of the swamp to flank a Confederate artillery battery. The soldiers are young, nervous. They look at the tree line with dread. To them, the swamp is a monster. To you, it is a neighbour. You lead them in. You move off the path, stepping onto the root systems. The soldiers struggle. They slip. They splash. They curse. You have to stop constantly, silencing them with a look. "Walk where I walk," you whisper, repeating the lesson you taught Clara so long ago. You reach a patch of sawgrass. The soldiers try to hack through it with bayonets. "No," you hiss. "Push. Don't cut. Noise." You show them how to part the grass with their bodies, slipping through without breaking the stalks. It is a dance they don't understand. You reach the battery. It is positioned on a dry ridge overlooking the road. The Confederates are relaxed, watching the road, never expecting an attack from the rear, from the water. You signal the Union captain. He nods, his face pale. The attack is short, violent. The Union soldiers charge out of the reeds, firing a volley. The Confederates scramble, shocked. You don't fire. You watch. You see a Confederate officer trying to rally his men. You raise your musket. You aim. You fire. He falls. The resistance crumbles. The Union soldiers cheer. They slap you on the back. They offer you tobacco. "You really are ghosts," one says, awe in his voice. But you don't feel like a hero. You feel exposed. The noise of the battle, the shouting, the gunfire, it rings in your ears. In the swamp, violence was silent. A spear thrust, a snare snapping. Here, it is a cacophony. That night you sleep in a tent. The canvas flaps in the wind. The ground is dry. You're warm, but you can't sleep. The air is too still. There are no crickets, no frogs. It feels dead. You miss the dampness. You miss the smell of the mud. You miss the feeling of the platform swaying gently under you. You go outside. You sit by the dying fire. Kofi is there, whittling a piece of wood. "This war," he says softly, "it is loud." "Yes," you agree, "but it is necessary." You nod. You think of the slave catchers. You think of the dredge. You think of the people who hunted you for sport. Now you are the hunter, and you have the backing of an army. The campaign moves forward. You guide troops through marshes, across rivers, through forests that terrify the city-born soldiers. You become legends in the regiment, the swamp angels, but the war takes its toll. You see men die, blown apart by cannons riddled with bullets, succumbing to dysentery in the camps. You see the land torn up by trenches and artillery shells. The earth is bleeding. One day you are scouting ahead near a river crossing. You spot movement in the brush. A Confederate patrol. They are setting an ambush. You start to pull back to warn the column, but then you see him. A dog, a bloodhound. It lifts its head, sniffing the air. It catches your scent. It bays. A low, mournful sound that freezes your blood. It is the sound of your nightmares, the sound that chased you for years. The patrol turns. They see you. "Runner," someone shouts. Bullets whip past you, cutting through the leaves. You run. You don't run back to the column. You run toward the river, toward the water. The dog is behind you, crashing through the brush. You can hear its panting. You reach the bank. The river is wide, the current fast. You don't hesitate. You dive. The water closes over your head. It is cold, dark, silent. You go deep, grabbing a root on the bottom to hold yourself down. You open your eyes in the murky water. You're back in your element. You're hidden. Above you, bullets splash into the water, losing their energy in inches. The dog barks at the edge, frustrated. You hold your breath. You count the heartbeats. 100, 200. You're not a soldier anymore. You are a maroon, and the water protects its own. You stay submerged until your lungs feel like they are collapsing in on themselves. The darkness of the river is total, a sensory deprivation tank that forces you inward. You listen to the thud of your own heart, the rush of blood in your ears. Above, the sounds of pursuit are muffled, distant pops and splashes. When you finally break the surface, you do it under the overhang of a willow tree, your nose and eyes barely clearing the water. You gasp quietly, sipping the air. The bank is empty. The dog is gone. The patrol has moved on, assuming you drowned or floated downstream. You drag yourself out of the water, shivering. Your uniform is heavy, sodden wool that feels like a lead weight. You strip it off, wringing it out with shaking hands. You are alone now, cut off from your unit, cut off from Kofi and Marcus. You are back to square one, survival. But this time, you are armed with knowledge. You know the terrain. You know the enemy. You move along the riverbank, staying in the shadows. You need to reconnect with the Union lines, but you have to cross miles of hostile territory. The land here is different from the Great Dismal. It is farmed, tamed. Fields of corn stretch out, broken by fences and roads. It feels exposed. You travel at night. You sleep in barns, burrowing into haylofts like a rat. You steal food from gardens, tomatoes, green beans, hard peaches. You are a ghost haunting the edges of the war. One night you see a fire, not a campfire, but a building burning, a plantation house. You creep closer. Shadows dance against the flames. You see figures running, carrying bundles. You hear shouting. It is a raid, but not by soldiers. These are freedmen, former slaves who have taken up arms. They are liberating themselves. You watch as they lead a group of people out of the slave quarters. Men, women, children. They are terrified, but there is hope in their eyes. You step out of the shadows. A man raises a shotgun, aiming at your chest. "Friend," you say, raising your hands. "Union scout." He lowers the gun, squinting at your tattered blue uniform. You look more like a swamp rat. "I am," you say. They take you in. They feed you corn pone and fatback. They tell you stories of the war you haven't seen, the war in the fields, the sabotage, the silent resistance. You realize that the Maroons aren't the only ones fighting. There is a whole network of resistance, a web of freedom stretching across the South. You travel with them for a few days. You teach them how to move silently, how to hide their tracks. They teach you the layout of the local plantations, the safe houses, the signals. You eventually reach the Union lines. It is a chaotic scene. Regiments are moving, artillery is rumbling, the air smells of smoke and horses. You find your unit. Kofi sees you first. He grabs you in a bear hug, lifting you off your feet. "We thought the river took you," he says. "The river knows me," you reply. You're back in the fight. but you are changed. You have seen the breadth of the struggle. It isn't just about the swamp anymore. It is about the whole land. The war drags on. Winter comes again. But this time, you aren't in a hut made of palmetto. You're in a canvas tent shivering on a cot. The army food is terrible. Hardtack that breaks your teeth. Salt pork that is more salt than pork. But you have coffee. Hot, black, bitter coffee. You drink it by the gallon. It keeps you awake on the long watches. One night, sitting by the fire, Marcus asks you a question. When this is over, he says, staring into the flames, do we go back? Back to the swamp. Back to the silence. Back to the isolation. You think about the village on stilts. The smell of the cypress. The feeling of the mud between your toes. It was home. It was safety. But you also think about the world outside. The schools being built for freed children. The land being claimed by families. The vote. I don't know, you say honestly. Maybe we don't have to hide anymore. The war ends in the spring. It ends with a surrender you hear about days later. The guns go silent. The silence is strange, heavier than the noise. You're mustered out. You're given a small pension and a train ticket. You're free. You and Kofi and Marcus stand at a crossroads. To the west lies the new frontier, the promise of land. To the north, the cities. To the south, the swamp. Kofi looks at the tree line. The water is quiet, he says, but the world is loud. I think I will see what the noise is about. He goes north. Marcus goes west. You stand alone. You look at the swamp. You can smell it. The rot. The life. The secrets. You turn away. You walk toward the road. You aren't going back to hiding. You're going to build something in the light. But you keep your knife. You keep your moccasins. And every time it rains, every time the air gets heavy and thick, you close your eyes and you are back there. Back on the platform. Back in the canoe. Back in the only place that ever truly knew you. And you know, if the world ever tries to break you again, the swamp will be waiting. Years pass, but you don't count them in winters or harvests anymore. You count them in milestones of a life built above ground. You work as a carpenter in a small town not far from the coast. The skills you learned in the swamp, splitting cypress, joining wood without nails, reading the grain, make you valuable. You build houses for families who are tasting freedom for the first time. You build schools. You build churches. The wood you use is often pine or oak, but sometimes when you can afford it, you buy cypress. The smell of the sawdust takes you back instantly. It smells of resilience. But even here, in the world of dry land and sunlight, the shadows linger. Reconstruction is a turbulent time. There are new laws, new dangers. Men in white hoods ride at night trying to reclaim the fear you thought you left behind. One evening, you're sitting on your porch sharpening your tools. The air is heavy with impending rain. You hear a sound, a low rhythmic thumping. Your heart skips a beat. The dredge? No, it is a train. The railroad is expanding, cutting through the forests, crossing the rivers. The iron snake has returned, bigger and louder than ever. You watch the smoke rise from the locomotive. It is progress, they say. It connects the world. But you know what connection costs. A young man walks up the road. He is dusty, tired. He carries a small bundle. "Evening," he says, stopping at your gate. "Evening," you reply. He looks at your hands, at the way you hold the chisel. "You know wood?" "I know wood," you say. He hesitates. "I heard stories about a man who walked out of the Great Dismal, a man who fought with the swamp." You look at him closely. He has the look, the wariness in the eyes, the set of the jaw. He is running from something. "Stories are just wind," you say. "What do you need?" "Work," he says, "and a place to be quiet." You nod. You point to the shed behind your house. It's dry, and the roof holds. He stays. His name is Julian. He doesn't talk much about where he came from, and you don't ask. You teach him how to use the froe, how to plane a board smooth. He learns quickly. One day you take him fishing. You go to the river, finding a quiet spot under a willow. The water is brown, moving slow. "You ever catch an eel?" you ask. He shakes his head. "Ugly things." You laugh. Ugly keeps you alive. You show him how to feel for them in the mud, how to pin them. He struggles at first, disgusted by the slime, but he learns. When he finally pulls one up, thrashing and slick, he grins. It is the first time you have seen him smile. "Tastes like dirt," he says later, eating the smoked meat. "Tastes like freedom," you correct him. The years turn. You grow old. Your joints ache when it rains, a reminder of the sleeping platforms and the damp nights. You walk with a limp, the legacy of a twisted ankle on a route mass decades ago. But you are content. You have built a life. One night, a storm hits, a hurricane. The wind howls with a fury that shakes the house. The rain comes down in sheets, flooding the road. You sit by the window watching the water rise. It creeps up the steps of your porch. It reminds you of the flood in the swamp, the way the water took everything you hadn't tied down. Julian is pacing. The levee won't hold, he says. The town will flood. We go high, you say calmly. You move to the attic. You bring food, water, blankets. You wait. The storm rages for hours. The roof groans. A tree crashes down in the yard. But the house holds. You built it well. You built it with swamp wisdom. When the storm passes, the world is water. The town is a lake. Boats are rowing down the main street. You step out onto the roof. The air is clean, scrubbed by the wind. The sun is coming up, turning the floodwater gold. You see a boat approaching. It is a flat-bottomed skiff, poled by a man who knows what he is doing. He stops near your roof. He is old, his hair white as cotton. He looks up at you. Still above water, I see, he says. It is Kofi. You haven't seen him in 20 years. He looks different, softer in the middle, his clothes city-made. But his eyes are the same, sharp, watchful. The water always tries, you say. But we float. He laughs, a deep rolling sound. I heard you were here. Thought I'd check if you washed away. Not yet, you say. He climbs onto the roof. You sit together, two old men watching the flood. You don't talk about the war. You don't talk about the swamp. You talk about the water, how it moves, how it changes everything. They're draining it, Kofi says suddenly. The Great Dismal, the lumber companies. They're cutting the cypress, digging new canals. You feel a pang in your chest, the sanctuary, the heart. They can't drain it all, you say. It's too deep. They're trying, he says, but the peat, it burns. They set fires to clear the brush and the ground itself catches fire. It smoulders for months, underground. You nod. You remember the smell of burning peat. It is a smell that never leaves you. The swamp fights back, you say. It always does. Kofi stays for a few days, helping to clear the debris. Then he moves on. He's a city man now, a leader in his community up north. But you see him look at the waterline on the trees, checking the level. You see him test the ground before he steps. The swamp is in him too. You live out your days in the house you built. You teach Julian everything you know. And when you die in a bed with dry sheets. But in your final moments, as the light fades, you aren't in the room. You're back on the platform. The mist is rising. The frogs are calling. You're young again. You're strong. You step off the wood and into the blackwater. It is cool. It welcomes you. You start to paddle, gliding silently through the trees, deeper and deeper into the green, toward a place where no map can follow. You're standing at the base of a towering granite wall, so massive it seems to press the air out of your lungs. The stone is cold, rough under your fingertips, and fits together so perfectly that not even a blade of grass could slip between the blocks. There is no mortar, no cement, just gravity, geometry, and the sheer, impossible weight of rock balancing on rock. The wind here is different. It doesn't carry the damp rot of the swamp or the salt of the ocean. It carries the scent of dry grass, heated stone, and the distant smoke of a cattle fire. You're no longer in the humid lowlands of the American South. You have been transported across time and ocean to the high plateau of southern Africa, to the heart of an empire that history books will one day struggle to explain. Congratulations. You've just woken up in the year 1400. The good news? You're in the capital of a thriving kingdom, Great Zimbabwe. The bad news? You're a builder, and the king has just ordered a wall that must stand forever. The sun beats down on your back, intense and unrelenting. The sky is a vast, cloudless blue that stretches over the savannah. You wipe sweat from your brow, your hands gritty with granite dust. You're standing in the great enclosure, the largest structure south of the Sahara. Your job is simple. Move a stone that weighs as much as a cow. You don't have cranes. You don't have wheels. You have logs, ropes made of baobab bark, and the muscles of 50 men. Heave, the foreman shouts. His voice echoes off the stone walls, amplified by the acoustics of the enclosure. You pull. The rope bites into your shoulder. Your feet slip on the dry earth. The stone groans as it slides over the wooden rollers. It moves an inch, then another. This is engineering stripped to its rawest form. It is physics versus flesh. You look up at the wall. It curves gracefully, 30 feet high, decorated with a chevron pattern near the top. The stones are dressed, shaped by hand with iron tools until they are uniform bricks of granite. Millions of them. But the real genius isn't just the lifting, it is the heat. Great Zimbabwe is hot. The plateau bakes during the day, but step inside the enclosure and the temperature drops. The walls are thick, absorbing the sun's heat. The narrow passageways channel the wind, creating a natural air conditioning system. You walk through one of these passages, carrying a basket of smaller stones for the interior fill. The air rushes past you, cool and refreshing. You realize the entire city is designed to breathe. The conical towers, the curved walls, they aren't just for show. They manipulate the airflow, pulling cool air in from the valley floor and venting hot air up and out. It is a machine made of stone. You reach the top of the hill complex where the king resides. The view is staggering. Below you, the valley is filled with thousands of huts, the smoke of cooking fires rising in thin columns. Cattle graze in the distance, their hides shining like copper. You're hungry. The work burns calories fast. You head to the communal cooking area. Women are stirring great pots of sadza, a thick porridge made from sorghum and millet. It is the fuel of the empire. You take a bowl. The sadza is hot, dense and bland until you dip it into the relish, a stew of wild spinach and peanuts. It tastes earthy and rich. You eat with your hands, moulding the porridge into a scoop. As you eat, you listen to the talk around the fire. Traders have arrived from the coast. They bring beads from India, porcelain from China, cloth from Persia. Great Zimbabwe is a hub, a nexus of trade that connects the interior of Africa to the rest of the world. But trade brings rumours. The gold mines are getting deeper, a man whispers. The veins are thinning. Gold is the blood of the city. It is what buys the beads and the cloth. If the gold runs out, the trade stops. You look at the walls you're building. They are meant to project power, permanence. But if the gold fades, will the walls be enough? That night you sleep on a mat of woven reeds inside a mud brick hut. The floor is polished with cow dung and clay until it shines like marble. It is cool, clean, and smells faintly of smoke. You dream of stones. You dream of a wall that never ends, circling the world. You wake before dawn. The air is crisp, almost cold. The stone walls are silent, grey ghosts in the half-light. You walk to the quarry. The granite here exfoliates naturally, peeling off in layers when heated by fire and then doused with cold water. It is a brutal, dangerous process. You build a fire on the rock face. You wait until the stone is scorching hot. Then you and two others lift a heavy clay pot of water. Now you pour. Steam explodes, blinding and hot. The rock cracks with a sound like thunder. A slab peels away, ready to be shaped. This is how the city grows. Fire and water, heat and cold. You spend the morning shaping the slab. You use a dolerite hammer, harder than the granite. Clink, clink, clink. The rhythm becomes part of your heartbeat. By midday the heat is back. You retreat to the shade of the wall. You lean against the stone. It is cool. It has stored the night's chill. You watch the king's procession. He walks under a canopy of colourful cloth, surrounded by drummers and dancers. He wears gold bracelets and anklets that jingle with every step. He looks powerful, invincible, but you notice something. He glances at the sky, at the dry horizon. The rains are late. The cattle are getting thin. A city needs more than walls. It needs water. It needs food. You look at the valley. The soil is exhausted. Too many people, too many cattle, for too long. The land is tired. You realize that the greatest threat to Great Zimbabwe isn't an invading army. It is the city itself, its hunger, its weight. That evening you sit on the wall, watching the sunset. The stone glows orange and red, absorbing the last of the light. You feel a strange connection to this place. You have poured your sweat into these rocks. You have left your mark. But you also feel a sadness. You know that stone lasts, but people don't. Empires rise and empires fall. The walls will stand silent and enigmatic, long after the voices of the builders have faded. You climb down, you go to your hut, you sleep, and in your dreams the wind blows through the ruins, whispering secrets to the grass. The dry season hits Great Zimbabwe hard. The grass turns from gold to a brittle, dusty grey. The wind picks up, carrying grit that coats your skin and crunches between your teeth. The cattle are restless, lowing constantly, their ribs showing through their hides. You are no longer moving stone. The construction has paused. Now the priority is water. You stand in a long line of people, passing clay pots hand to hand from the valley floor up to the hill complex. The king must drink. The priests must perform their rituals. But the wells in the valley are running low, the water muddy and foul. You trek miles every day to a distant spring that still flows clear. The pot is heavy on your head, balanced on a woven ring of grass. Your neck aches. Your feet are cracked and bleeding from the hard, stony ground. You pass the gold processing areas. The furnaces are cold. Without water to wash the ore, the gold cannot be separated. The economy has stalled. The traders from the coast have stopped coming. There is nothing to buy, and the journey is too hard without water for their caravans. In the great enclosure, the air conditioning system you marvelled at is now working against you. The wind funnels dust into the narrow passages, creating choking clouds. The cool stone is just a memory. The walls radiate the day's heat back at you long into the night. Hunger returns. The sadza is thinner, watery. The relish is gone. You eat roasted mapane worms, large, colourful caterpillars that are a staple in lean times. They are crunchy, salty, and taste like dried leaves. Sickness follows the hunger. Dysentery sweeps through the crowded huts. You hear coughing in the night, the sound of weakness. One evening you are summoned to the hill complex, not as a builder but as a listener. The spirit mediums are speaking. They sit in a trance, their bodies shaking. They speak in voices that are not their own, the voices of the ancestors. The land is angry, they say. The stone is too heavy. The cattle are too many. The message is clear. The city has outgrown its resources. It has consumed everything around it. The king listens, his face a mask of granite. He knows what must be done. We move, he says. It is the same choice the Maroons made centuries and continents away. When the environment turns against you, you adapt or you die. The abandonment of Great Zimbabwe begins. It isn't a panic. It is a slow, organised dismantling. Families pack their mats, their pots, their few precious tools. They herd their gaunt cattle toward the north, toward the Zambezi Valley, where the water still flows. You stay behind for a while, part of the rear guard. You walk through the empty city. The silence is profound. The wind whistles through the stone corridors, sounding like a flute played by a ghost. You touch the wall you helped build. It is solid, permanent. It will stand for hundreds of years. But without the people, it is just a pile of rocks. You leave a small offering in a niche in the wall, a single gold bead you found in the dust, a payment to the spirits of the place. Then you turn your back on the city. You walk north, following the dust cloud of the cattle. You are leaving behind the greatest monument in Africa, but you are carrying something more important, the knowledge of how to build it. Decades later, you are an old man living in a new village, Kami. The walls here are different, terraced, decorated with checkered patterns. But the technique is the same, the dry stone, the balance. You sit by the fire telling stories to your grandchildren. You tell them about the great enclosure, about the tower that touched the sky. Why did we leave? A child asks. Because a city is not stone, you say. A city is people, and people need water. You look at the fire. You see the flames dancing, consuming the wood. Civilization is a fire. It burns bright. It warms, but it consumes. And when the fuel is gone, you have to move the fire. You close your eyes. You can still feel the weight of the granite in your hands. You can still taste the dust. You are a builder. And builders know that everything eventually falls down. You're walking through a landscape that feels alien, yet fundamentally familiar in its harshness. The red earth stretches out in every direction, broken only by the silhouettes of acacia trees and the distant shimmering heat haze. The air's dry, sucking the moisture from your skin with every breath. You're no longer in the humid swamps of Virginia, nor the high plateau of Zimbabwe. You've stepped into the vast arid expanse of the Sahel, on the edge of the Sahara Desert. Congratulations, you've just woken up in the year 1324. The good news? You're part of the most legendary caravan in human history. The bad news? You're walking across the desert with Mansa Musa, the richest man who ever lived, and the gold you carry is heavier than water. The heat is a physical force. It presses down on you, a weight of 110 degrees Fahrenheit. The sun is not a friend here. It is an eye that never blinks. You wrap your indigo-dyed headscarf tighter, shielding your face. The fabric smells of dye and sweat. You're one of 60,000 people, a moving city. There are soldiers, heralds, slaves, scholars and merchants, and camels. Thousands of camels grunting and spitting, their hooves padding softly on the sand. Your job is simple. Carry the gold. You hold a staff of pure gold in your hand. It weighs 6 pounds. To your left and right, hundreds of others hold identical staffs. Behind you, 80 camels carry 300 pounds of gold dust each. The wealth is staggering. It is absurd. It is dangerous. Gold is heavy. Gold is soft. Gold does not drink. You are thirsty. Your water skin is light, sloshing with the last dregs of tepid, metallic-tasting water. The next oasis is 2 days away. You watch the king, Mansa Musa. He rides a horse, not a camel, a sign of his power. He's surrounded by a canopy of silk, carried by attendants who rotate every hour to keep from fainting. He looks regal, calm. But you see him wipe sweat from his brow. Even the richest man in the world cannot buy a lower temperature. The caravan moves slowly, a serpent of humanity winding through the dunes. The sound is a constant low roar. The shuffle of feet, the murmur of voices, the clank of metal. You pass a skeleton in the sand, bleached white bones, half buried, a camel, a man. The desert keeps no secrets, but it tells no stories. It just consumes. Night falls, and the temperature plummets. You shiver, huddled under a woolen blanket next to a small fire of dried camel dung. The dung burns with a pungent, grassy smell. You look at the gold staff lying next to you. In the firelight it glows. It is beautiful, but you cannot eat it. You cannot drink it. If you are left behind, it is just a heavy rock. A griot, a storyteller, begins to sing. He plays a kora, a harp lute made from a calabash gourd. The notes are liquid, cool, like water falling. He sings of the ancestors, of the great empire of Mali, of the spirits of the desert. Gold is the sweat of the sun, he sings, but water is the blood of the earth. You listen. The music weaves through the camp, knitting the thousands of souls together. It is a lifeline, stronger than the gold. The next day, a sandstorm hits. It starts as a dark line on the horizon, swallowing the sky. Then the wind hits, a wall of grit. You wrap your scarf around your face, leaving only a slit for your eyes. The sand stings like needles. It gets everywhere, in your ears, your nose, your clothes. The caravan stops. You crouch next to a camel, using its bulk as a shield. The animal groans, closing its nostrils, its double rows of eyelashes protecting its eyes. It is built for this. You are not. The storm rages for hours. You are buried in sand. You can't see the person next to you. You can only hear the wind, a howling demon. You think of the swamp. The water was a threat, but it was life. Here, the lack of water is the threat. The sand is dry, sterile. When the wind dies, you dig yourself out. The landscape has changed. Dunes have shifted. The path is gone. But the guides, the Tuareg nomads hired by the king, know the way. They read the ripples in the sand, the position of the stars. They are the masters of this ocean without water. They lead you to the oasis. It is a miracle. A cluster of date palms, a pool of clear water. You drink. You don't sip. You gulp. The water is sweet, cool. It washes the dust from your throat. You splash it on your face, feeling the crust of sand dissolve. You fill your skin. You water the camels. Mansa Musa orders gold to be distributed to the local villagers. He gives it away like it is sand. He builds a mosque on the spot, paying the workers in gold dust. You watch the economy of the desert shift. The price of salt skyrockets. The price of gold plummets. He is breaking the world with his generosity. But you also see the exhaustion in his eyes. The burden of the journey. He's carrying the weight of an empire across the empty quarter. You continue toward Cairo. The journey takes months. You lose people. Sickness, heat stroke, exhaustion. You leave them behind, buried in shallow graves marked with stones. But you also gain something. A sense of scale. The world is bigger than you imagined, and you are walking across it. You reach Cairo. The city is loud, chaotic, smelling of spices and sewage. The Nile flows through it, a ribbon of life. You stand before the Sultan of Egypt. Mansa Musa refuses to bow. "I bow only to God," he says. The Sultan is offended, then impressed. He sees the gold. He sees the power. You spend months in Cairo. You trade your gold staff for silk, for books, for stories. You learn about the world beyond the desert, but you miss the silence of the dunes. You miss the clarity of the stars. The return journey is harder. The gold is gone, spent or given away. The excitement has faded. Now it is just the long walk home. You return to Timbuktu, the city of scholars. You help build the Djinguereber Mosque, designed by an architect brought back from Spain. You mix mud and straw, building walls that curve like the dunes. You realise that the true wealth of Mali isn't the gold, it is the knowledge, the books, the architecture. You grow old in the shadow of the mosque. You tell stories of the journey, of the heat, of the sandstorm. Gold is heavy, you tell the children, but a story weighs nothing, and it lasts forever. The sun has bleached the colour from your robes, turning the indigo to a pale, dusty sky blue. Your feet are calloused, harder than the leather sandals you wore out months ago. You're no longer just a carrier of gold. You're a walker of the void. The caravan has left the safety of the oasis and is pushing into the deep desert again, the empty quarter of the trade routes. Here the dunes rise like mountains, shifting and groaning in the wind. The silence is profound. Physical pressure against your eardrums. You're walking beside a camel named Saba, mourning. He is a cantankerous beast, prone to spitting green bile when he is tired, but he is steady. His wide padded feet splay out on the sand, keeping him from sinking where you struggle. You hold his lead rope, the rough hemp fibres biting into your palm. The water situation is critical. The wells at the last oasis were low, the water muddy and smelling of sulphur. The guides are rationing strictly. You get a cup in the morning, a cup at midday, a cup at night. It isn't enough. Your tongue feels swollen, a dry sponge filling your mouth. You learn the tricks of the desert. You keep a small pebble under your tongue to stimulate saliva. You breathe through your nose to conserve moisture. You move slowly, deliberately, never rushing. Rushing kills. One afternoon, the heat reaches a peak. The air shimmers so violently that the horizon dissolves into liquid pools. A mirage. You see water, a vast blue lake just ahead. You want to run toward it. Your body screams to run. But the Tuareg guide, a man wrapped in blue veils with only his eyes visible, stops you. He touches your arm. His hand is cool, dry. "Spirit water," he says. "Do not drink." You blink, and the lake vanishes, replaced by more burning sand. It is terrifying. Your own mind is betraying you. That night, you camp in a depression between two massive dunes. The wind has carved the sand into ripples that look like waves frozen in time. The air cools rapidly, dropping 40 degrees in an hour. You wrap yourself in your blanket, shivering against the sudden chill. The king, Mansa Musa, walks through the camp. He has shed his ceremonial robes for simple wool. He stops at your fire. He looks at the exhausted faces of his people. He motions to a servant, who brings a small leather pouch. The king opens it and takes out a pinch of something. Salt. "Eat," he says. You lick the salt from your palm. It stings your cracked lips, but then a strange clarity washes over you. The salt helps your body hold onto the water. It is a small mercy, a king's gift. "We are close," he says quietly. The wind smells of the river. You sniff the air. It smells only of dust and cold. But you trust him. You have to. The next day, you find the wells. They aren't marked by trees or green grass. They are just holes in the rock, covered by heavy stone slabs to prevent evaporation. The guides find them by reading the landscape. A slight dip in the terrain, a specific formation of rocks. You help lift the slab. The air that rushes out is cool and damp. You lower a bucket on a long rope. It takes a long time to hit water. When you pull it up, the water is clear, cold, sweet. You drink. It is the best thing you have ever tasted. Better than wine, better than honey. It is life. You refill the skins, you water the camels. Saba drinks 10 gallons, his throat working rhythmically. You are revitalized. The journey continues. You reach the edge of the desert weeks later. The sand gives way to scrub brush, then to acacia trees, then to fields of millet. You see the Niger River, a broad ribbon of silver reflecting the sky. People come out to meet you. They have heard the stories of the Golden King. They bring food, fresh fruit, roasted meat, milk. You trade your empty water skin for a basket of mangoes. You eat until your stomach hurts. You wash the dust from your skin in the river. You have crossed the void. You have walked through the fire and come out the other side. You return to your home in Niani, the capital. You're different now. You have seen the world. You have seen the pyramids of Giza, the libraries of Cairo, the holy city of Mecca. You use your share of the gold, a small pouch of dust given to you at the end of the journey, to buy a plot of land near the river. You plant rice. You build a house of mud bricks, thick and cool. But you never forget the desert. On hot nights, when the wind blows from the north, you can taste the sand. You can hear the silence. You tell your children about the heat, about the thirst, about the king who gave away gold until it was worthless, but who gave you salt when it mattered most. Wealth isn't gold, you say, looking at the river. Wealth is water. Wealth is shade. Wealth is waking up. You're standing on a rocky outcrop, the wind whipping at your clothes, carrying the scent of salt spray and fish. Below you, the Atlantic Ocean crashes against the cliffs of Gorée Island, a sound like endless thunder. But you're not looking at the sea. You're looking at a door. The door of no return. Congratulations, you've just woken up in the year 1780. The good news? You're currently standing on the outside of the door. The bad news? You're a captive, waiting to be loaded onto a ship that smells of death even from a mile away. The island is small, a speck of volcanic rock off the coast of Senegal. It is beautiful in a cruel way. Pastel-coloured colonial houses with red tile roofs, bougainvillea blooming in vibrant purples and pinks. But beneath the beauty lies a machinery of human suffering so efficient it chills your blood despite the tropical heat. You're being held in the Maison des Esclaves, the house of slaves. It is a 2-story building. Upstairs, the traders live in luxury. They drink wine, eat fine food, and sleep in beds with mosquito nets. Downstairs, in the damp, dark cells, hundreds of people are packed like sardines. The walls of your cell are stone, thick and cold. There is no light except for a single slit high up near the ceiling. The floor is dirt, packed hard by generations of bare feet. The air is thick, suffocating. It smells of sweat, fear and dysentery. You're shackled. Iron cuffs chafe your wrists and ankles. The metal is rusted, biting into your skin with every movement. You try to find a comfortable position, but there isn't one. You're sitting shoulder to shoulder, with strangers who speak languages you don't understand. Wolof, Sarah, Mandinka. But you understand their eyes. Survival here is a mental game. If you give in to the despair, you die before you even reach the ship. You have to find anchors. You focus on the small things. The way the light changes in the slit window, marking the passage of day. The sound of the waves. A constant rhythm that reminds you there is a world outside. The taste of the food. A gloopy millet porridge served once a day in a wooden trough. It is tasteless, but it keeps you alive. You make a friend. A young man named Boubacar. He's from a village inland, a farmer. He doesn't speak your dialect, but you communicate with gestures. He shares his water ration with you when you're too weak to fight for the ladle. You share your space, letting him lean against you when he sleeps. We are brothers now, his eyes say. One day, the door opens. The traders come in. They are looking for the strong. They inspect you like livestock, checking your teeth, your muscles. You stand tall. You don't look down. You want them to see your defiance. They select you. And Boubacar, you're led out into the courtyard. The sunlight is blinding after the darkness of the cell. You squint, tears streaming down your face. You're marched toward the door. It's just a narrow opening in the stone wall leading to a wooden jetty. Beyond it, the ship waits. A massive, dark vessel bobbing in the harbour. You step onto the jetty. The wood is slick with sea spray. You look back at the island, at the colourful house, at the door. You know that once you step off the jetty, your life as you know it is over. Your name, your family, your history, it all stays here. But you make a choice. You will carry it inside you. You will remember. You step onto the ship. The deck is hot under your feet. You're pushed toward the hatch. The smell rising from the hold is a physical blow, a stench of human misery so potent it makes you gag. You descend the ladder. Darkness swallows you again. But this time, it is different. This time, you are moving. The The ship lurches as the anchor is weighed. You feel the motion in your stomach. You are leaving Africa. But you're not leaving alone. You have Boubacar. You have the memory of the sun. And you have the will to survive the middle passage. The journey is a nightmare of weeks that blur into months. The heat in the hold is unbearable. The air is foul. Sickness spreads like wildfire. Bodies are thrown overboard, feeding the sharks that follow the ship. You survive by going numb. You retreat into your mind. You build a village in your head, populating it with the people you lost. You plant fields. You build houses. You live a whole life in the dark. One night, a storm hits. The ship is tossed like a toy. Water pours into the hold. Panic erupts. People scream, praying to gods old and new. But you don't scream. You hold on to a beam, bracing yourself. You whisper to the water. You tell it you're not afraid. The storm passes. The ship holds. You arrive in a new world. The light is different here, harder. The trees are strange. The birds sing songs you don't know. You're sold. You're put to work. You're renamed. But you never forget the door. You never forget the sound of the waves at Gorée. You tell the story to your children and your children's children. You tell them about the house with the red roof, about the dark cell, about the door that tried to take your soul but failed. We walked through the door, you say, but we didn't leave ourselves behind. We carried Africa with us. And decades later, when the chains are finally broken, when freedom rings out across the land, you know that the echo started there, on a rocky island, in the heart of a person who refused to be erased. You are standing in a cotton field, the white bowls stretching out to the horizon like a sea of foam. The sun is a relentless hammer, beating down on your back. It is 1850 again, but this time you're not in a swamp. You're in the heart of the Mississippi Delta, on a plantation that feels like its own country. You wipe sweat from your brow, the salt stinging your eyes. Your hands are raw, calloused from picking cotton from dawn until dusk. Your back aches with a dull, constant throb. But tonight, the field isn't just a place of labour. It is a map. You wait until the overseer rides past, his horse kicking up dust. You glance at the woman working the row next to you. Her name is Hattie. She's older, her hair grey under her head wrap. She starts to hum a low, mournful tune. Swing low, sweet chariot. To the overseer, it is just a spiritual, a song to pass the time. To you, it is a code. Sweet chariot means the Underground Railroad is active. Coming for to carry me home means the conductor is nearby. You hum back, adding a verse about the River Jordan. The river, that's the route. That night you slip out of your cabin. The air is thick with humidity and the sound of crickets. You move through the shadows, avoiding the patrols. You meet Hattie by the old oak tree near the creek. She hands you a quilt. It looks like a scrap blanket, a chaotic patchwork of colours and shapes. But you know better. Read it, she whispers. You trace the patterns with your finger. A square with a jagged line, the drunkard's path. That means avoid the main roads, take the winding trails. A square with 4 triangles, the flying geese. Follow the migrating birds north, a star pattern. Follow the North Star. It is a map sewn in cloth, a guide to freedom hidden in plain sight. You take the quilt, you wrap it around your shoulders. It smells of wood smoke and lavender, a scent Hattie uses to mask human odour from the dogs. You set off. The journey is terrifying. You move only at night, hiding in barns and caves during the day. You wade through streams to hide your scent. You rub onions on your boots to confuse the hounds. You reach a safe house, a small farm with a lantern in the window. The farmer, a Quaker with kind eyes, hides you in a false bottom of his wagon. You lie there for hours covered in hay, listening to the wheels creak, praying the patrol doesn't stop him. You cross the Ohio River in a small boat, the water black and cold. On the other side, the air feels different, lighter. You have made it to the Free States. But the Fugitive Slave Act means you are still hunted. You have to keep moving all the way to Canada. You reach the border, you see the flag, the Union Jack. You step across the line, you fall to your knees, you grab a handful of dirt. It feels the same as the dirt in Mississippi, but it means something completely different. You're free. Years later, you sit on your porch in Ontario. The snow is falling, soft and silent. You have a quilt on your lap. It is old now, faded, but you can still read the map. You trace the path with your finger, the drunkard's path. The flying geese. The star. "Grandpa, tell us about the map," your granddaughter says, climbing onto your knee. You smile. "It wasn't just a map, child," you say. "It was a promise. A promise that no matter how dark the night, there is always a way home." You look out at the snow. It covers everything, making the world new. But under the snow, the earth remembers. And so do you. You're standing in a small room filled with the scent of roasted peanuts and hot pressing combs. It is Saturday morning in 1920s Harlem, and the air is alive with the sound of jazz drifting up from the street below. But you aren't here for the music. You are here for the hair. You sit in the chair, the leather worn smooth. The woman behind you, Madam C.J. Walker's best student, is mixing a concoction in a small bowl. It smells of sulphur and bergamot. "Hold still," she says, applying the mixture to your scalp. It tingles, then burns slightly. Beauty is pain, honey, but dignity is power. You watch in the mirror as she works. She isn't just straightening hair, she is sculpting an identity. In a world that tells you your natural self is wrong, this ritual, the washing, the oiling, the pressing, is an act of reclamation. You leave the salon feeling taller. You walk down Lenox Avenue. The street is a runway. Men in zoot suits with wide brims. Women in flapper dresses with pearls. Everyone is shining. You stop at a newsstand. The headline screams about a riot in Tulsa, about a neighborhood burned to the ground. Black Wall Street. Gone. The joy drains out of the day. You realize that this golden age, this renaissance, is fragile. It is built on a foundation of sand constantly eroding under the waves of hatred. But you also see something else. You see a group of men rebuilding a storefront. You see a woman handing out pamphlets for a protest march. You see a poet reciting verses on a street corner, his voice rising above the traffic. "We build," the poet says. "We burn. We build again. We are the phoenix." You buy a paper. You fold it under your arm. You keep walking. That night you go to the Cotton Club. The music is loud, frantic, desperate. It is the sound of a people dancing on the edge of a volcano. You see Duke Ellington at the piano. He plays a chord that sounds like a question. The trumpet answers with a scream. You close your eyes. You let the music wash over you. It is chaotic, discordant, beautiful. It is the sound of survival. You leave the club at dawn. The streets are quiet now. The garbage trucks are rolling. The city is waking up. You walk home. You pass a church. The choir is practicing. Lift every voice and sing. You stop. You listen. The harmony is perfect. You realize that Harlem isn't just a place. It is a state of mind. It is a refusal to be silent. You go back to your apartment. You sit at your typewriter. You start to write. You write about the swamp. You write about the desert. You write about the cotton fields. You write about the hair salon. You're weaving a quilt of words, a map for the next generation. "We were here," you type. "We survived. We are still here." The sun comes up, turning the brick buildings gold. It is a new day, and you are ready for it. You're standing in the middle of a desert, but not the Sahara. This is the American Southwest, 1870. The land is red rock and scrub brush, stretching out under a sky so big it makes you feel small. You are a Buffalo Soldier, a member of the 10th Cavalry. Your uniform is wool, thick and blue, designed for northern winters, not desert summers. It traps the heat against your skin, making you sweat until your tunic is soaked. Your boots are heavy, the leather stiff and unyielding. You're tracking a band of Apache warriors who have disappeared into the canyons like smoke. They know this land. You are learning it. Your horse, a sturdy bay named Thunder, shifts under you. He is tired. You are tired. You haven't slept in 2 days. "Dismount," the sergeant orders. We walk the horses, save their strength. You slide out of the saddle, your legs numb. The ground is hard, baked by the sun. You lead Thunder by the reins. The dust kicks up with every step, coating your throat, your eyes. You reach a waterhole. It is a muddy puddle at the bottom of a ravine. You fill your canteen. The water is warm and tastes of alkali, but you drink it gratefully. You make camp as the sun sets. The temperature drops rapidly. You wrap yourself in your wool blanket, lying on the hard ground. You listen to the coyotes howling in the distance. You think about why you are here. You joined the army for the pay, $13 a month, and for the respect. But out here, respect is hard to find. The settlers you protect call you names. The officers give you the worst assignments. Even the horses get better feed than you do, but you have your brothers, the other soldiers. You share your food, your water, your stories. You sing songs around the fire, your voices rising into the night. Captain says we move at dawn, your friend Elijah whispers. Says he smells smoke. Apache smoke, you ask? Maybe, he says. Or maybe just the ghost of the land. The next morning you ride into an ambush. Arrows fly from the rocks. Gunfire echoes in the canyon. You don't panic. You have been trained. You return fire, your hands steady. You protect your horse. You protect your brothers. The fight is short, brutal. When the dust settles, you're still standing. You look at the fallen Apache warriors. They fought with honor. They fought for their land. You feel a strange kinship with them. You're both fighting for a place in a world that doesn't want you. You bury the dead. You say a prayer. Then you mount up. The mission continues. You ride until you reach the fort. It is a collection of adobe buildings in the middle of nowhere. But it is home. You clean your rifle. You groom your horse. You eat beans and hardtack. That night you sit on the wall looking out at the desert. It is beautiful in the moonlight. Silent. Eternal. You realize that you are part of this landscape now. You have bled into the dust. You have drunk the water. You're a buffalo soldier, and you will endure. You're standing in a small church in Birmingham, Alabama. It is 1963. The air is thick with the scent of floor wax and old hymnals. Sunlight streams through the stained glass, casting coloured patterns on the wooden pews. But outside the world is burning. You're here for a mass meeting. The church is packed. Men in suits, women in Sunday hats, children in their best clothes. Everyone is singing. We shall overcome. The sound is powerful, vibrating in the walls, in your chest. You're tired. You marched yesterday. You were sprayed with fire hoses. The water was cold, hitting you with the force of a hammer. It knocked you down, bruising your ribs, but you got back up. Today you're going to march again. Dr. King stands at the pulpit. His voice is a river, deep and flowing. He talks about justice. He talks about love. He talks about the mountaintop. We must accept finite disappointment, he says, but never lose infinite hope. You look around the room. You see faces etched with worry, but also with determination. You see a woman holding a sign that says, I am a man. You see a boy with a bandage on his head. You realize that this isn't just a political movement. It is a spiritual one. It is a battle for the soul of a nation. The meeting ends. You step out into the street. The police are waiting. They have dogs. They have batons. You link arms with the person next to you, a stranger. But in this moment, they are your family. Don't let go, they whisper. I won't, you say. You walk forward. The dogs bark. The police shout. But you keep walking. You sing. You pray. You're arrested. You're thrown into a paddy wagon. It is hot. Crowded. It smells of sweat and fear. But you're not afraid. You're part of something bigger than yourself. You are part of the river that is washing away the old world. You spend the night in jail. The floor is concrete, cold and hard. You have no blanket, but you have your voice. You sing through the bars. The other prisoners join in. The jail fills with music. This little light of mine. The guard tells you to shut up. You sing louder. You realize that they can lock up your body, but they can't lock up your song. They can't lock up your hope. You're released the next day. You walk out into the sunlight. You are hungry, tired, sore. But you are free. You go back to the church. You get ready to march again. Because the work isn't done. The river is still flowing. And you are going to ride it all the way to the sea. You're standing in a small kitchen in a shotgun house in New Orleans. It is 1927. And the Mississippi River is angry. The great flood has breached the levees. And the water is rising. The air smells of mud and fish. The humidity is a physical weight. You are packing a crate with jars of preserved figs, okra and green beans. These are your winter stores, your survival. Your grandmother sits in the corner, her hands busy with a needle and thread. She's sewing money into the hem of her skirt, coins she saved from selling pralines on the street. Water got a memory, she says, not looking up. It always comes back for what it left behind. You look out the window. The street is a river. Boats are floating past the front porch. People are shouting, carrying bundles on their heads. You have to leave. You have to go to higher ground. You help your grandmother into a small skiff. She clutches her Bible and her sewing basket. You push off from the porch, the water swirling around your waist. You row through the streets. You pass houses submerged to the roof. You see a piano floating by, keys plinking as the water hits them. You reach the levee camp. It is a tent city on a strip of dry land. Thousands of people are crowded together. The Red Cross is handing out food, beans and bread. You find a spot for your grandmother. You build a shelter from driftwood and canvas. You make a fire. That night you listen to the river. It roars like a beast. It is tearing down everything you built, but it can't tear down your spirit. A man starts playing a trumpet. It is a mournful, bluesy sound. People gather around. Someone starts to sing. When the levee breaks, I'll have no place to stay. You join in. The music is a balm. It heals the fear. The flood recedes weeks later. You go back to your house. It is filled with mud. The furniture is ruined. The garden is gone, but the house is still standing. You start to clean. You shovel out the mud. You scrub the walls. You plant new seeds. You rebuild, because that is what you do. You are from the river. You know how to rise. Years later, you are an old woman. You sit on the porch, watching the river flow by. It is calm now, tamed by new levees, but you remember the flood. You remember the boat. You remember the song. You tell your great-granddaughter the story. We didn't drown, you say. We learned to swim. You're standing in a modern laboratory, the hum of computer servers filling the air. It is 2024. You're a geneticist, tracing lineages through DNA. You look at the screen. A map of the world lights up. Lines connect West Africa to the Caribbean, to the American South, to Brazil. It is a web of history, written in code. You see the resilience in the genes, the markers for surviving malaria, for enduring starvation, for adapting to new environments. You realise that your ancestors didn't just survive, they evolved. They turned trauma into biological strength. You close your eyes, you can feel them. The maroon in the swamp, the builder in Zimbabwe, the walker in the desert, the buffalo soldier, the marcher in Birmingham. They are all inside you. Their blood flows in your veins. Their stories are etched into your DNA. You are the result of thousands of years of survival. You are the answer to their prayers. You open your eyes, you get back to work. You are mapping the future. And as you type, you can almost hear a drum log beating in the distance. One beat, all clear.